All right. Hey, everybody. I'm going to start by reading the remote meeting script and jump into our agenda. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body as well as members of the public may access this meeting via virtual means. Participants may access this meeting through a remote meeting link as posted on the meeting agenda and through the town's online calendar. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hands or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. This meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. We will now confirm attendance of members. Please respond with present if you're on the call. Elise Malowski.
Present.
Great. Lucia Lopez.
Present.
Matthew Ronca.
Present.
Great. Michael King.
Present.
Parker Happ.
Present.
Jane Moran. All right, Jane's not here yet. If anybody sees her join, let me know. Karen Wills.
Present.
Vikasath Prati.
Present.
And Rob Benson here. Staff, John Gelsich.
Present.
Lori St. John.
Present.
And I see Jane. I see you just joined. Welcome. All right. Let's jump into our administrative items. Wilson Street road damage discussion.
Through the chair, I have not heard from Peter Bemis about this. I reached out to him last week and have not gotten a response back. So I believe we can just skip over this one for now.
Okay. Let's, at some point, we're going to need to decide what to do if there's just no response, but I think for now, we'll just skip it. Approval not required. 25 East Main Street, James, is it Danahay? John, do you know if that if the applicant is on?
Yeah, so it would be helpful to anybody who is going to be speaking to raise your hand so that I can identify you and add you to the panel. So whoever is representing the applicant on this one, it would be helpful. All right, thanks, Joe.
Hello, all.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
So Jim and Dale Danahy have an 8-acre piece on East Main Street. They would like to carve out a lot for their younger son, Alex, to build a home on. So what we have done is prepared a plan that creates 2 lots, one for their existing home at 25, and then the new lot, lot 2, down along the easterly boundary line that would be separated from 25 and become their son's lot, lot 2. We have multiple zone districts that fall across the parcel, RA and RB. By the local bylaw, we have met the most restrictive, which is the RB. So the lot is set up to be in excess of 150 feet of frontage, 45,000 square feet in size. So we have 273. We leave Jim and Dale over 300, close to 305 feet. So their lot stays conforming. Their lot is about 7 acres in size, so well over the minimum needed for that zone district.
Okay, thanks. Anyone on the board, is there any questions? John, do you have any additional commentary to add?
Nope, it looks like they, as Joe said, they're just separating a larger lot into 2 conforming lots. So it looks like it warrants endorsement.
All right, at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to endorse. Let me get the actual motion here. Hold on. I'd like to entertain a motion that the planning board endorse the A&R plan for 25 East Main Street entitled Plan of Land in Hopkinton, Mass. Prepared for James Danahy, dated October 23rd, 2024.
So moved.
So moved.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Matthew. All right, roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right. Thanks, Joe. Let's move
Through the
to,
chair.
go ahead.
Just so the applicant knows, I will get this signed tomorrow and you should be able to pick it up. And then as a note to the planning board, we still have the Form K that needs to be signed. The Form E was signed for something else and the Form K was behind it. And so we only have one signature on the Form K. So I would ask the planning board to come in tomorrow and sign that as well while I have the opportunity.
Thanks, John. All right. Next on our agenda is the meeting minutes from the September 23rd meeting and the October 7th meeting. Does anyone have any comments, questions, edits for either set of meeting minutes? Matthew, go ahead.
Was October 7th in there? I only saw September 23rd. Trying to find the folder again.
Same.
Through the chair. It's
Go ahead,
Laura.
Lori.
The meeting minutes are still being worked on, so you won't see them right now.
Thank you.
Okay, so the only ones we have are September 23rd. Are there any questions or edits or anything anyone would like to comment on?
You look good.
Awesome. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from September 23rd, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Michael. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King. Michael, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Yes.
All right. Parker,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right. We're on to agenda item number 2, 37 East Street, New England Laborers Training Center. So we should be able to get through this and close this out tonight. There, I guess, has been agreement agreement between our peer review consultant and the applicant. So it'd be great to hear from the applicant of where things stand on their end.
Hi, this is Hillary Holmes with Langen representing the laborers union, and I believe John Racine from RGB may also be on. I don't know if he was promoted yet. But I can just begin. I think we were last before you back in August, and since then we also had a site visit in September with a couple members of the planning board. We received peer review comments from Pear Corporation. We had provided responses to those comments to John. So John, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that at all. John, the planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. For my video on. We got the response back from PAR today. I sent that along to the applicant. It seems like all of the comments have been addressed, and there's nothing left remaining as part of the review. So I think the board at this point is able to move forward with that process and figure out if there's any other issues that the board has.
All right, thanks, John. Bob from PAR, would you like to make any comments before we're going to just work through our agenda here?
No, I don't think so. I think everything was addressed to our satisfaction. Yeah.
All right, let's work through our agenda and see if we can. So we should be able to close this out. So, do I need to read the decision criteria, John?
You don't need to read the decision criteria. It's just something that the board is going to use to make that decision. But we do need to read the findings and the conditions.
All right, before I go through the findings and conditions, is there anyone on the board that has any questions? All right. So I'm going to go through section 2.9, the findings for major project site plan 2.9.1. The proposed major project site plan conforms to the site plan standards as described in section 210-136-1 of the zoning bylaws. Number 2, pursuant to section 210-124.1, the development triggers site plan review for the alteration of a parking area. As such, the development is required to provide at least 10% of the total spaces, 2 parking spaces as EVSE installed parking spaces, or 20% of the total spaces, 4 parking spaces as EV ready parking spaces. The applicant has stated that they will provide 10 EVSE installed parking spaces elsewhere on the property to comply with this requirement. The location, layout, and orientation of the EVSE installed spaces in the area of work subject to this amendment would not allow for the efficient provision of EVSE installed parking spaces. Therefore, the board finds that the requirements of section 210-124.1 shall be waived in order to allow the applicant to locate the required EVSE installed spaces in more suitable locations within the subject site and not necessarily within the area of work, which is the subject of this amendment. And I think I'm going to go to the conditions for the major project site plan and do the stormwater management permit separately. Unless anyone has any disagreement. Consistent with the previous decisions, so we're on 2.10.1. Consistent with the previous decisions, the Director of Municipal Inspections inspects projects under construction compliance with the approved decision of site plan review. This includes the driveway, roadway, and infrastructure construction shown on the plan. If applicable, if the Director of Municipal Inspections determines at any time before or during construction that a registered professional engineer or other such outside professional is required to assist with the inspections of the stormwater management system or any other component of the site plan, the applicant shall be responsible for the cost of those inspections. All construction activity shall adhere to applicable law, state and federal laws and regulations regarding noise, vibration, dust, sedimentation, and the use of interference with or blocking of town roads. The applicant shall be responsible for mitigating all construction-related impacts, including erosion, siltation, and dust control. The applicant shall maintain all portions of any public way used for construction, access free of soil, mud, or debris deposited due to use by construction vehicles associated with the project, and shall regularly sweep such areas as directed by the Director of Municipal Inspections in consultation with the Department of Public Works Director. The applicant shall regularly remove construction trash and debris from the site in accordance with the good construction practice and the construction management plan. No tree stumps, demolition material, trash, or debris shall be burned or buried on the site. All existing lighting within the development project, whether shown on the approved site plan or required by the Massachusetts State Building Code, shall be shielded, directed downward and not upward or outward, and shall not spill onto adjacent property. All fixed mechanical equipment on the site shall be screened from view from the ground. Such screening shall be sufficient in the opinion of the Director of Municipal Inspections. If construction has not commenced within 3 years of the date of filing of the site, plan decision with the town clerk approval shall be automatically rescinded unless such time is extended by the board. For the purposes of this condition, the term commenced shall mean the commencement of site work. Construction may occur only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, and Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. pursuant to Chapter 141, Article 1 of the Town of Hopkinton General Bylaws. The applicant shall submit final as-built plans as the planning board prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Number 10, the applicant developer shall provide the principal planner with a project point of contact and contact information prior to the issuance of a building permit. This point of contact information will be kept current through correspondence to the principal planner until the final certificate of occupancy is issued or construction is otherwise considered complete.
A completed signed construction management permit shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of any site work. The applicant shall also submit a complete final revised plan set which incorporates all of the modifications made during the public hearing process and any required in this decision. The plan set shall identify the location of the 10 EVSE installed parking spaces to be located on the site. A completed signed long-term operation and maintenance plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of construction. This can be combined with the construction management plan. If preferred by the applicant, the long-term operation and maintenance plan and construction management plan may be modified versions of previously submitted plans, incorporating the modifications approved as part of this amendment. Number 13, a signed illicit discharge statement shall be provided to the planning board prior to construction. Erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be implemented during the construction period in accordance with the approved site plan and the construction management plan. If they are found to be inadequate, the applicant shall immediately correct any deficiencies. The planning board shall receive a sign-off confirming that the site contractor and any major subcontractors have received the construction management plan prior to the commencement of any site work. Can I, John, I'm trying to technically navigate how I should go about, if I should now read the decision criteria and findings for the stormwater management permit or vote on the findings of the site plan.
It's up to you how you want to go about it. I mean, you could do one permit by itself, read the findings, have a vote on that, have read the conditions, have a vote on that, because the conditions would be the approval. And then you can do the other permit, or you can just read all of it and then take votes on either one of them. I mean, you need to vote them separately. You need to vote the site plan like on its own, and then the stormwater management permit on its own.
All right. I think those votes can happen independently, but just for my reading purposes, I think I'll just gonna chug through reading the stormwater management, the findings for the stormwater management and the conditions. So now I'm going to read the findings for the stormwater management permit 2.9.2. The proposed work will comply with the Hopkinton stormwater regulations. Now I'm going to read the proposed conditions for the stormwater management permit. So we're on 2.10.2. All sediment control should comply with the following performance criteria: minimize total area of disturbance and protect natural features in soil. Sequence activities to minimize simultaneous areas of disturbance, mass clearings and grading of the entire site shall be avoided. Minimize peak rate of runoff in accordance with the Massachusetts stormwater standards. Minimize soil erosion and control sedimentation during construction, provided that prevention of erosion is preferred over sedimentation control. Divert uncontaminated water around disturbed areas. Maximize groundwater recharge. Install and maintain all erosion sediment control measures in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications and good engineering practices. Prevent off-site transport of sediment. Protect and manage on and off-site material storage areas, overburden and stockpiles of dirt, borrow areas, or other areas used solely by the permitted projects are considered a part of the project. Comply with the applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations including waste disposal, sanitary sewer or septic systems regulations, and air quality requirements, including dust control. Prevent significant alteration of habitats mapped by the Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program as endangered. Threatened of special concern, estimated habitats of rare wildlife and certified vernal pools, and priority habitats of rare species from the proposed activities. Institute interim and permanent stabilization measures, which shall be instituted on a disturbed area as soon as practicable, but no more than 14 days after construction activity has temporarily or permanently ceased on that portion of the site. Properly manage on-site construction and waste materials. Prevent off-site vehicle tracking of sediments. Dust shall be controlled at the site. Divert off-site runoff from highly erodible soils and steep slopes to stable areas. Number 2, the project should comply with the following erosion and sediment control requirements. Prior to any land disturbance activities commencing on the site, the developer shall physically mark limits of no land disturbance on the site with tape, signs, or orange construction fence so that the workers can see the areas to be protected. The physical marker shall remain in place until a certificate of completion has been issued. Appropriate erosion and sediment control measures shall be installed prior to soil disturbance. Measures shall be taken to control erosion within the project area.
Sediment and runoff water shall be trapped and retained within the project area. Wetland areas and surface waters shall be protected from sediment. Sediment shall be removed once the volume reaches 1/4 to 1/2 the height of a hay bale. Sediment shall be removed from the silt fence prior to reaching the load-bearing capacity of the silt fence, which may be lower than 1/4 to 1/2 the height. Sediment from sediment traps or sedimentation ponds shall be removed when design capacity has been reduced by 50%. Soil stockpiles must be stabilized or covered at the end of each workday. Stockpile side slopes shall not be greater than 2 to 1. All stockpiles should be surrounded by sediment controls. Disturbed areas remaining idle for more than 14 days shall be stabilized with seeding, wood chips, bark mulch, tarpaulins, or any other approved methods. For active construction areas such as borrow or stockpile areas, roadway improvements in areas within 50 feet of a building under construction, a perimeter sediment control system shall be installed and maintained to contain soil. Letter H. A tracking pad or other approved stabilization method shall be constructed at all entrance/exit points of the site to reduce the amount of soil carried onto the roadways and off the site. Wilson Street and Cedar Street in the vicinity of the project shall be swept as needed throughout the construction process. Permanent seeding shall be undertaken in the spring from March through May, and in late summer and early fall from August to October. During the peak summer months and in the fall after October 15th, when seeding is found to be impractical. Appropriate temporary stabilization shall be applied. Permanent seeding may be undertaken during the summer if plans provide for adequate mulching and watering. All slopes steeper than 3 to 1, as well as perimeter dikes, sediment basins, or traps and embankments must, upon completion, be immediately stabilized with sod, seed, and anchored straw mulch, or other approved stabilization measures. Areas outside of the perimeter sediment control system must not be disturbed. Temporary sediment trapping devices must not be removed until permanent stabilization is established in all contributory drainage areas. All temporary erosion and sediment control measures shall be removed after final site stabilization. Disturbed soil areas resulting from the removal of temporary measures shall be permanently stabilized within 30 days of removal. Number 3, a minimum of 7 days prior to the start of construction, a detailed construction sequence shall be submitted to the principal planner by the site contractor for review and approval. The approved construction sequence shall be followed through the course of the construction and shall be altered only with prior review by and written approval by from the principal planner. Number 4, a signed copy of the stormwater pollution prevention plan shall be provided to the board prior to the issuance of a building permit. Per 6.0.k.2, the SWPPP must include the assigned notice of intent and approval letter. All required stormwater pollution prevention plan, stormwater construction site inspection reports shall be submitted to the principal planner within 14 days of each inspection. An adequate stockpile of erosion control materials shall be on site at all times for emergency or routine replacement and shall include materials to repair or replace silt fences, hay bales, stone filters, berms, or any other devices planned for use during construction. Soil testing and excavation of the site's stormwater basins must be observed by the board's engineer prior to laying loam and seed, if applicable. The applicant developer shall notify the principal planner at least 48 hours, weekends and holidays excluded, prior to the soil testing and or excavation to allow for adequate time to coordinate these observations. All stormwater basins must be cleaned once the site is stabilized. All stormwater basins should be cleaned prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Okay. So I think I'd like to do, I think it makes sense to do the stormwater management permit first and vote on the findings. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud for the stormwater management permit application.
So moved.
Thanks, Parker.
Second.
Thanks, Matthew. All right, roll call vote. Elise Malowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. So now I'd like to entertain a motion
to approve the stormwater management permit. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approve the stormwater management
Can we
permit.
just do stormwater management?
We just approved the findings. Now we want to approve the permit in totality. So, I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approve the stormwater management permit with the following conditions as they were previously read aloud by the chair.
So moved.
Thanks, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Parker. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. So now I'd like to, now we're going to vote on the findings for the major project site plan. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the board accept and approve the findings as previously read aloud for the amendment to the major project site plan application.
So moved.
Thanks, Parker.
Second.
Thanks, Jane. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Point of order, debate.
Sure. Go ahead.
So I
Matthew.
thought we never came back to the EVSE question. And I noticed that that's now in the findings. Considering this is the first time that we've had an ask to waive this, and I don't see it listed as a waiver. I thought we discussed that we were going to have some discussion about whether that was warranted or not. And I don't know if it's covered in the letters that came in today, since I haven't had time to read them.
What? So I don't think we waived any EVSA requirements. We allow the applicant to have them not within the confines of the site work. So they're still going to be on the property, the required EVSE parking spaces. We're just not going to. It's not going to be required to have in the construction work zone, if that makes sense.
The findings as read says that the board finds that the requirements of section 210-124.1 shall be waived.
I think in the conditions it says that, like, why? Let me see. So I'm referring to like page 12, number 11. I think it's so the proposed findings 2.9.1 or 2.9.1 part 2. Pursuant to sections 210-124, the development triggers site plan review for the alteration of a parking area. As such, the development is required to provide at least 10% of the total spaces with 2 parking spaces as EV installed parking spaces, or 20 total spaces, 4 parking spaces as EV ready parking. The applicant has stated they will provide 10 EV installed parking spaces elsewhere on the property to comply with this requirement. The location, layout, and orientation of the EVSE installed spaces in the work area are subject to this amendment. It would not allow for the efficient provision of EVSE installed parking spaces. Therefore, the board finds the requirements of section should be waived in order to allow the applicant to locate the required EVSE installed spaces in more suitable locations within the subject site and not necessarily within the area of work, which is the subject of this amendment. So we're waiving that requirement that it's within the project work area, but they're still going to have these spaces on the Laborers Training Center property. Do you have other questions?
So I think in this situation, having walked the property, like I think the proposal makes sense because they're adding new spaces farther away from the property. But one of the concerns that we raised earlier and why we were going to debate this, right, is we don't want to allow in other situations somebody to say, oh, I'm just going to put these 10 spaces way in like some auxiliary property where they're not useful or they're not going to be used. And so I want to make sure that we're cognizant of the precedent that we're setting and the rationale why we were allowing a waiver here. And also that, clarify whether a waiver was needed just so we don't run into a situation in the future.
John, do you have any recommendations on how to handle this this concern?
So the conditions and findings and pretty much everything in my memo is really just a suggestion. The board can modify that however they'd like. So it's really up to the board to figure out the path forward on this. And if you want to have some other condition added that speaks to this directly or not in the findings or done a different way, that's up to the board.
I think maybe the cleanest way is to, if we want to spell out something specifically, we could add, so we've got 15 conditions. We can add a 16th condition of why we're allowing it. Like what's the rationale?
So just procedurally, that should be a finding, not a condition.
Okay. All right. Let's add a third finding. Anyone have any suggestions of what we should say? Go ahead, Matthew.
So I think the finding itself, 291.2 is fine if that's what we agree as a board, but I don't think we ever had any discussion on this, which is why I was surprised we were just jumping right through it because we had said we were going to in a previous meeting.
Okay. I'm happy to discuss it. Anyone else have any questions? I think this was last before us in August. I to be honest, I didn't remember that off the top of my head that we were going to discuss it. Go ahead, Lucia.
I think the concern is the concern that Matt expressed is probably something to consider, that in the future, if somebody else says, we want to put them in this place that doesn't make sense, then would this allow them to do that? Given that we've now allowed somebody to put them elsewhere on site versus where they're adding more parking. I know that for me, the fact that they're providing 5 times the required EV spaces is a definite plus, because they needed to provide 2 and they're providing 10. So
I think I think they're meeting the requirement. Unless I'm confused, it's either to provide 2 EV parking spaces or EVSE is like basically EV ready. Is that they have the infrastructure to basically make them EV spaces, but it's not to actually make them EV spaces.
Right, but they're not providing them where they're adding these parking spaces, which is what they came before us to request to amend.
Does anyone else on the board have any additional comments? I'm all for adding a finding to kind of explain why. Does anyone have any other thoughts? Go ahead, Matthew.
I was going to let Michael speak first, but I was just wondering if there was anything from the applicant to speak to why they wanted the waiver, since that wasn't in the previous packet, and I haven't read the stuff that came in today.
Yeah, I can share. We did submit a plan showing the 10 EV spaces. So they are not EV ready. They are actually like EV charging stations that are on the campus. I can share my screen and show those locations just so the board can have a better sense of where those spaces are and look in reference to where the project area for the for these 16 additional parking spaces are. I just put in a request to share my screen. I don't know if that's gone through yet. Okay. So this is the figure that we had submitted with some of our other information. East Street is right along here. So this is the main entrance. This is the area in here with where we're proposing the 16 additional parking spaces. So you can see the closest EV, the two closest EV charging locations are right here by the headquarters building. It's a new building and new parking lot that was constructed. The other ones, the other 8 are throughout the campus. But as John had mentioned, you know, the requirement is basically 10% of the EV spaces, which would be 2, which these are kind of the closest ones to our parking lot. I don't know if the board has any other questions regarding kind of the EV layout. Part of the reason why we're requesting, you know, to account for these 2 EV charging locations is, you know, the infrastructure has already been constructed for these. These chargers are already in. The provision in the bylaw was not enacted when this overall project was approved, so there were no EV requirements as part of that. It was only, you know, part of the bylaws after this project was approved. So that's why it's being applied now to this smaller area.
Go ahead, Michael.
So do we think it would make sense just to state what the applicant just said when they were, you know, drawing their plans up originally and building this stuff? It wasn't part of the bylaw. Now that we're approving everything, it's part of the bylaw, and that's the reason why the board sees it fitting to grant them the waiver.
I think that gives us coverage for any precedent that just because the original project site plan was approved without the EV charging requirements, and this modification has an EV parking space requirement that we accommodated for not having them within the project site work area. I think that gives us coverage for precedent. Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if we're writing that as a rationale rather than just debating it, I would also want to. I think it should also cover that the existing EV locations are more optimal locations for the usage, and as opposed to just randomly located. So I do think this exception makes sense. We shouldn't be penalizing people for having gone above and beyond in the past and having better locations than they'd be putting in now if they had to do it now. I also think that this might be fine just having captured in the minutes with the existing findings, unless anybody has any other objections.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, John.
I have a proposed condition. Matthew, please add your statement to this or how you'd like it to be worded. The board recognizes that the applicant has installed EVSE installed parking spaces in excess of the current requirements for EV parking prior to the adoption of the EV parking bylaw. And then Matthew, I don't know what you want to add on to that.
And that the existing installations are more suitable locations than the new location. I don't have a better way of phrasing that. Maybe that's good enough, unless anybody has a better way of phrasing that. I'm good with what John had.
I think for our purposes, it kind of eliminates any opportunity for precedent setting. So I like it. Does anyone else have any comments?
So I just drafted another sentence that maybe captures. 1 second. So then I added, the existing EV parking spaces are more appropriately located than in the parking area approved as part of this decision. So the whole finding would read, the board recognizes that the applicant has installed EVSE installed parking spaces in excess of the current requirement for EV parking prior to adoption of the EV parking bylaw. The existing EV parking spaces are more appropriately located than in the parking area approved as part of this decision.
And that's an additional condition.
No, that's a finding.
That's an additional finding. All right. I am good with that. Does anyone want to? Is everyone else good?
I move to amend the findings as. Where are we? We're in the middle of a vote, right?
I think we had a motion and a second, and we went and then you asked for discussion,
Debate. Yeah.
and I don't remember who made the motion or the second, but if they're willing to agree to the findings amendment, we can. That would be great.
Was it Jane and Parker? I can't remember either.
Yeah, sorry, trying to come off mute. I think I moved or second. I'm okay with moving forward with the action as discussed.
Lori, did you happen to capture who made the motion in the second?
So for the stormwater management, it was Parker and Matthew, and then you kind of went back and forth for both stormwater. So then the major site was Parker and Jane.
Jane, are you okay with the amendment?
Yes, I agree. I'm in agreement.
All right.
So through the chair, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So am I writing the motion to read, move that the board accept and approve the amended findings and conditions as previously read aloud for the stormwater management permit application? Because that's the one that you made the changes to.
That makes sense to me.
Through the chair, the motion was just for the findings, not for the findings and conditions. It's not the approval.
But just the findings at this
Right.
point.
I take out conditions as previously read aloud.
Yep.
And then you're going to go back now to do the conditions?
We're going to first vote on the findings, and then we're going to make a motion to approve the stormwater management permit.
Conditions only, not the findings. We already did that.
We are going to try to do the findings now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So Parker and Jane agreed to the amendment. So I'd like to do a roll call vote on the findings for the stormwater management permit. Elise Malowski.
Through the chair, it's for the major project site plan, minor site plan.
Sorry,
Major project site plan.
Major project site plan, not stormwater management permit. Elise Malowski.
You're waiting for me?
Yep.
Okay. Yes.
All right. Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
Yes.
Vikasath Prati.
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. All right. So now we're going to move to the approval of the overall major site plan. So I'd like to, so this is 3.12.2.1 for everybody following along. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approve the major project site plan with the following conditions as they were previously read aloud by the chair.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, John.
Nitpicky, it's an amendment to the major project site plan.
I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approve the amendment. Is it amendment or is it like a major project site plan with the amendment?
They have a major project site plan already approved. They are amending that major project site plan. So it's an amendment to the major project site plan.
Okay, I move that the board approve the major project site plan. Hold on. I move that the board approve the amendment to the major project site plan with the following conditions as they were previously read aloud by the chair.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, hold on. Who was first? Was it
I
Vic?
think Matthew was
Lori-
first.
Yeah, I got Matthew for the first and then Vic for the second.
Thank you. Can I just go back one more time for this motion? Move
Sure.
the board accept and approve the amendment in the findings with the following conditions as previously read aloud
Yes.
for the amendment of the major project site plan.
Yes.
So the
And that was Matthew and Vic?
so this is amendment to the site plan, not the amendment to the findings that we just did.
That's
Just to be clear.
Yeah, so Lori, we're on 3.12.2.1. So we're trying, so there's already a major project site plan. So we're voting on the approving of an amendment to the major project site plan with the conditions that I previously read aloud. And so that's what Matthew made the motion and Vic seconded it.
Right, so approve the amendment findings?
No, we don't need any word findings in this.
Okay.
All right. If we're good, I'm going to move on to a roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Thank you. Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
Yes.
Vikasath Prati.
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. All right. I'd like to entertain a motion to close the. John, do I need to close this public hearing for 37 East Laborers Training East Street Laborers Training Center?
You do, but before you do that, I would request that we ask the applicant to extend the decision deadline to November. It's currently November 11th, but that's a holiday and I am quite busy this week. So I would like to extend it to the 14th.
Yes, that would be fine with the applicant to extend to November 14th for the decision.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to extend the decision deadline to November 14th and close the public hearing for Laborers Training Center major project site plan and stormwater management permit.
So moved.
Thanks, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Parker. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
Yes.
Vikasath Prati.
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. All right. So we're on to agenda item 4, MBTA communities. So I think if anybody would like to make
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Joe.
We skipped 4852 Main Street. We need to continue. We can take that later, but we just that is one that's in order.
Let's technically let's continue it now. I don't want to. So we need to continue. Continue the major project site plan to when?
December 2.
December 2nd is the next planning board meeting.
And do we need to extend the decision deadline?
I believe we do to. I'll say it's December 16th is what we had it as.
Is that okay if it's December 16th, or do we need to extend it?
No, I think we need to extend it to December 16th.
Oh, okay.
Right.
And the stormwater management permit, do we need to do anything with that?
That's the one that needs to be extended. The
The
decision deadline for the storm or for the site plan is 90 days after the close of the public hearing. The stormwater management permit has a date certain for the decision deadline, and they've agreed to December 16th.
Okay. I'd like to continue the public hearing for 48 to 52 Main Street for the major project site plan and stormwater management permit to December 2nd, and extend the decision deadline for the stormwater management permit to December 16th.
So moved.
Thanks, Matthew.
Second.
Thanks, Jane. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. So we're moving on now to agenda item four. So if anybody in the public would like to speak, just raise your hand. I'm gonna open it up and see if anybody on the planning board has any initial comments or questions after last week's meeting. Parker, go ahead.
Yeah, I have comments, but I was hoping to hear what the public has to say before we.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me just open up to Karen. Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I just wanted to know if anyone else got a little flyer. I had a gentleman, I don't know if I'm gonna hold it up to my camera. It says Hopkinton, it's gonna be two. Hopkinton says yes to new homes, and it's an entire flyer on this whole MBTA initiative that's apparently being put out by the state. So I was just curious. I didn't know if anybody else got anything like that. I'd be happy to, I can scan it and send it around to everybody if they'd like to see what it said. I thought it was unusual that the state would be, well, maybe not, maybe it's not unusual that the state is putting out sort of information, trying to, pushing for all of this stuff. And so I was just curious if anyone else got one. Nope.
No, I did not.
Okay. All right, I'll scan it and send a copy to John unless John's already seen it, and then if he wants me to share it with everybody else.
I have not seen it.
Thank you.
All right, John, let me see if I can see the queue here. Oh, Elise, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was going to say. If it comes to me, I'll raise my hand again.
All right. I'd like to start off by Amy. I think you're going to need to state your name and address, but Amy Ritterbusch, who's on our select board, reached out to Karen Spilka, and I think she got some statement back that I think would be helpful for everybody to hear. Amy, are you able to join in?
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, this is Amy Ritterbusch, 54 Grove Street. As Rob said, I did listen to the whole last meeting, and then I reached out to Senator Spilka's office as well as James Arena DeRosa's office. Senator Spilka's office sent me back a statement today. This is a statement from Senate President Karen Spilka's office, and I'm going to read it word for word just so that people have this information. But they told me that the MBTA Communities Act was designed to help solve our housing shortage by requiring communities near public transit routes to add zoning for multifamily housing. Nowhere in the law does it allow the state to take a resident's or business's property by eminent domain, and there have been zero conversations in the legislature about that hypothetical or anything remotely close to it. The goal of this law is to help add housing to our state, and by doing so, bring down the skyrocketing cost of housing for all our residents so people can afford to stay in the communities they love, like Hopkinton. And that's where the statement ends. I certainly have my own thoughts, but I'll wait till later in the meeting to add my own thoughts.
Thanks, Amy. All right. There's somebody titled Indian Brook.
Good evening, Chair and board members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Can you say your name and address?
Yes. Shane Diaz, 5 Birchwood Lane. And I am the president for the board for the Indian Brook Association. And I was in attendance on the last call where John explained the entire plan, no 9 yards. And based on my discussion with the board members and also a good portion of the residents, which is about 112 units here at Indian Brook, the decision was made that I represent them, and basically we're definitely, unfortunately, against the rezoning. I just want to make sure that I'm cleared in stating that in front of the board that Indian Brook is definitely opposed to being part of the rezoning. So, but thank you. I was on the call last time. I heard a lot of good facts, but unfortunately, the representative of the community put my hands up and basically say that we are not for the rezoning.
Thanks, Shane. Do you have anything else?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, Igor R., you're up next.
Hello, good evening. My name is Igor Rubinstein. I'm in 49 Forest Lane. This is basically towards the mail from the senator, I believe, was it? I have a friend currently in Ashland, and there is a pressure from the state to actually approve the plan to do something similar to what the committee basically has here on their end right now. So my point here is that the state expresses interest and kind of starts to exercise some pressure to actually get the stuff built. So the committee's assessment that we can kind of skirt this and make this just a paper thing that will never be built might be rather optimistic. Thank you.
Thanks, Igor. Lucia, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say in terms of the rezoning that this is not rezoning, this is a zoning overlay. So how Indian Brook was built, that is still in place, and this would be placing the MBTA overlay on that.
Thanks, Lucia. Elise, go ahead.
Thanks. I remembered what I was going to say. I was thinking about our last meeting when we were talking about presenting 1 or 2 options to town meeting. And after thinking about the logistics of how it would get voted and how it would be presented at town meeting, I changed my mind, and I now feel that we should only have one vote to present at town meeting, because I just don't know how we would present it with 2 options to vote. I feel like we would have to present one option that would get voted on. And then if it passes, you don't even go to option 2. You know what I mean? How town meeting works?
Yep.
So I think it would be very confusing to have two options. So I just wanted to say that I changed my standpoint from the last meeting after thinking more about it.
Thanks, Lise. Go ahead, Lucia.
I agree with one option.
Thanks, Lucia. Ken Wisemantle, go ahead.
There we go. I found it. In the last couple of meetings, we've been talking a lot about where it should be. I would like to kind of talk about some of the requirements that if you were going to put it there. First of all, I'd like a better explanation of the requirement for a maximum of 1.25 parking spaces per unit. In Hopkinton, we don't have a lot of public transportation, and most couples that would be renting that are working in two different places, and each would have a car. If I look at downtown, if you do not provide enough parking for that, and as you all know on the planning board, you only require half of the parking needed for a restaurant, because they're going to figure you're going to go into somebody else's parking lot at nighttime when the restaurant is open. But if you fill all the parking spots up with residents because you don't have enough parking on the unit, I think that's not a recipe for disaster. I also think you ought to look harder at the lot size. It seems to be very small, and why should one lot size be different for each little district unless you're encouraging small standalone apartments to be built where currently single-family houses exist in the downtown area. So I think that the requirements of each zone needs a lot more look at. And the last point I'd like to make, but I really, really want to understand this parking of the maximum amount. I know it's in Westboro's zoning that way. Most of the time, planning board puts a minimum requirement on it. And, where we don't have enough parking, we've run into trouble in town. Anyway, and then my last overall point, if all the condo folks are going to come out against it, you guys got a snowball's chance of hell of passing it at special town meeting. You might seriously consider pulling the article and vote for no action, and rather than go down into a real defeat if all the condo associations are going to actively oppose you. So those are my 3 points today.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Vidias Sagar.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So this is Vidya from 43 Forest Lane at Preserve. I just want to give one point. Like last time we were represented in the town voting, and we sincerely had a voting down, and we wanted to consider this voting, the people's voice of representing and saying no to it. And also one thing, what you've been observed, second point I would like to make is what have been observed is when recently one of the property when on this community, when it was put on sold, there were a lot of challenges. Like this is coming into the rezoning, and it has a profound impact on the selling of the property. So we started seeing concerns, and also the impact without even rezoning in effect. So if it is rezoned, we'll have a very big impact. So please consider the...
Through the chair, point of order.
Go ahead, Parker.
This is not a rezone, and we need to call it what it is a zoning overlay.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, Parker, that what I'm saying is that without rezoning in effect, the people who came for the open house there have a lot of questions. 95% of the people know that I heard like this is going to be considered for rezoning. So we see these effects coming out, and so please consider that the people's votes. Last time we did no say no to it. So please keep that point and acknowledges the people's voice. Thank you.
Thanks, Vidya. Stacia Frederick.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can you just state your name and address?
Yep, Stacia Frederick Crozy. My address is 7 Lilac Court. That's in Hopkinton, obviously.
Go ahead with your comment.
All right. I have are you allowed to answer questions if we do ask them? I wasn't aware.
If I know the answer, I will try.
Okay, if I address it through the chair, just wanted to verify. So I didn't get a chance to attend the last meeting. Unfortunately, I had work conflicts, but I was told that you had originally agreed on one selection and then you moved to a different selection, which included Indian Brook, because there was a lot of people, there were a number of people who actually came in to let you know that they were against the idea of selecting other areas.
So that is not factual.
Okay.
So we're at the planning board. At the end of kind of nearer the end of our meeting, a member of the zoning advisory committee suggested that there wasn't much comments from Indian Brook in that why didn't we consider that plan further? So It wasn't a comment made by anybody on the planning board. So that's just not correct.
All right, thanks for correcting that and stating that for the record. Because it really felt like just because people had not spoken up from a certain area or a certain location, that this was then selected. I will state point blank that as a member of Indian Brook and somebody who has lived in this particular condo and I am one of those condo people for over 20 years in Hopkinton, not only have I given my time to this town, but I've also had to, in different occasions, really question different measures that have come up for different zoning overlays. That includes the hotel districting overlay that came up like 10 years ago, where it was suggested that maybe you guys could put a hotel, Motel 6, like right next to us. And each time these proposals come up, it is really not, I feel like there's not a lot of thought invested into the impact that this has on downtown. And I've seen this area grow pretty dramatically over the last 20 years. And I really just need to understand why we're again considering downtown without considering the impacts that this will have on the downtown area, especially at this particular intersection, which we're talking about, which is Lumber Street and Main Street. We have quite a few different residences that have gone up, which have, increased the number of people in the town dramatically. But also, it's just very difficult. I see nothing but complaints day after day on various groups and websites about the traffic in this town. And if we continue to look at putting this overlay district in the middle of downtown, whether it's over here next to Lumber and Main Street, or you're talking about Main Street and 85, you're again looking at the same traffic impacts that you're going to be looking at otherwise.
So I think what we're trying to do, I'll speak for myself. What I'm trying to do is implement MBTA zoning overlay district that will fundamentally have no impact in terms of additional housing being built. Like our downtown is already zoned for that number of dwelling units to be built. Like MBTA communities wouldn't allow a developer to build more per acre than they can already build now. So, and with the condominium complexes, it's just not financially viable for a developer to buy 100% of the units, demolish them, and build a new complex. Like at a point in this meeting, I'll bring up some financial calculations of how I think it would work out. So that will come in a few minutes, but a developer is only so the developer of Legacy Farms said a developer would pay about 25,000 per unit for land cost. That was his estimate of like the maximum or roughly what a developer would pay was 25,000. Ken Wisemantle, who just spoke, he said maybe they'd pay 40 to even as high as $60,000 per dwelling unit for land cost. To basically buy all the units at any one of these three complexes, the land cost is way higher than what a developer would really pay to build like tear down what exists and to build new dwellings, new homes, new condos, new apartments. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to meet the letter of this bylaw without actually building any additional new units in Hopkinton that can't already be built today.
What was the number of units per acre? I could have sworn it was 17 units per acre that was required by this particular.
The zoning, the MBTA community's bylaw is 15 units per acre on average for the town of Hopkinton.
Okay, 15 units per acre. And then as I recall, watching the ZBA replay, Indian Brook has 13 units per acre. And then there are others that would not necessarily meet that. So my other question is, and I know that this has probably been, discussed ad nauseum, but unfortunately I'm not finding a lot of information around this. I understand that you cannot consider, I think it's called Windsor Apartments, the ones that were built right behind the Spoon. I understand you cannot consider those because of a host agreement that's currently in place, but what impacts them that can't be considered when we know for a fact that not only do they meet that 15 units per acre, but they exceed it?
So I think you got a couple of pieces of information kind of muddled. So there's two apartment complexes in Hopkinton today that have very dense housing. One is the Windsor Apartments behind 110 Grill.
Yeah.
And so they were built as a unfriendly 40B complex, and all the units in that complex are considered affordable housing, even though only 10% of those units are considered affordable housing. And because they were built under this this special provision, it really makes it legally challenging to put an MBTA zoning overlay district on it, where somebody could redevelop that and take those units out of our affordable housing inventory. Where, and John, maybe you can help me on this in a second. So that's part one. Part two, there's an apartment complex within the Legacy Farms development. And Legacy Farms is built under the OSM UD, Open Space Mixed Use Development. And because of that, if we created a zoning over MBTA zoning overlay district over that apartment buildings, and somebody actually built it, we would in effect have to allow the OSMD, Open Space Mixed Use Development, to build that existing apartment complex somewhere else on the property. So we can't legally, it creates challenges that our town council said are to avoid. So that's the guidance we as a board have received, and that's what we've tried to do. But those are those are two of the first places we looked as a board to try to do, we already get dense housing here. If we can get these as part of our MBTA, it will have minimal impact to the town. Everybody should be kind of okay with that, but we hit roadblocks in terms of our town council saying it wasn't really feasible.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Parker.
Stacia, real quick, because one thing you said my ears caught on to, which was you said Indian Brook has only, has fewer homes per acre than what is being proposed. And I just wanted to be really clear and understand from the perspectives of residents at Indian Brook. Do you guys believe that by this overlay district, not rezoning, this overlay district being passed, lose or will be forced to demolish your homes for more housing, or that the existing units per acre has to abide by the overlay district?
I don't believe either of those points. I have read up on that. I just know that there is a concern that if we don't meet a certain amount of that, that there will be an opportunity for developers to come into neighboring lots or properties. And we do have open lots and properties that are going to be coming up. So we know that there's redevelopment happening at Elmwood at some point. We know that across the street from us, there are houses that could be sold. And last but not least, as somebody just pointed out from one of the other condominium or, townhome complexes, it impacts our resale value. And so that's where obviously we're coming from. And it's something where, almost everybody here is going to be coming from that. And as the planning board, you're more than aware of that. And I appreciate what you guys do, but I still have to be here to speak for my home.
So question, is somebody advising Indian Brook and saying that your resale value is going to be negative or negatively impacted?
I don't know. I'm not a member of the board. I will be frank about that. I just joined today because I, heard from somebody else who actually was on the last meeting who was also terrified of public speaking that, there really wasn't a whole lot of people on from Indian Brook. But I have heard from others in other towns who've told me that they have seen impacts to it. And I just want to be very fair and very aware of what may be the impact to my own home if we look at selling our home in the near future. So
okay, so and just so we're being, and looking at this from a fact-based perspective, totally understand you guys are doing your research, looking at other towns. Hopkinton, fastest growing town. I talked to Senator Spilka's office today. Hopkinton's the fastest growing town relative to new school growth, and I think we've been experiencing some growing pains, and so. But given the school is number one, the school district is number one ostensibly in the state, is there a belief that folks won't want to move to Indian Brook or buy in Hopkinton to attend the schools if you want to sell? Is that what residents believe, that nobody will want to buy your home and move in if you want to sell and get into the number one school district in Mass?
I mean, I get where you're coming from, Parker. I totally get it. And trust me, as somebody who spent years and years with my children in the public schools here, I understand that we do have the number one public schools in the state. I also have seen that impact of that on our public schools. And I was also, a very big part of trying to figure out how we were going to accommodate the number of additional children in our schools as a result of the fact that we continue to be number one and we see more and more families moving in and more places being built. I don't think that, it's going to stop people from moving here right now. I just have to tell you that if you're looking at a place here in Indian Brook, or you have an option of a place down the street, and I forget what it's called, but there's another like 2 or 3 different sets of townhomes that were recently built. Indian Brook may be great because it's got a location that's almost directly on 495. But if it looks like there's an opportunity and people are hearing more and more about the zoning overlay that's happening in other towns and they hear that we're actually zoned for that, there's going to be a lot of questions around that. And obviously, if I'm looking at a place, I might not consider this place. I might go ahead and consider a townhome in a different location because there is a possibility of impact of even greater density housing being built here.
Only other question is, does Indian Brook have a covenant that states that if there are any other additional units to be added to Indian Brook, that it takes a majority of residents to approve any net new construction as part of your HOA? Does something like that exist?
I can't answer that. The HOA president would be able to answer that more appropriately.
Is the HOA president still on that they can answer the question?
Through the chair.
Shane Diaz, if you're on, there's a question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so there is a rule, a bylaw that 2/3 of the members of the residents have to physically vote to switch or change the bylaws.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like that you need 2/3 to be able to add any new construction. And you spoke on behalf of the residents that the majority of residents aren't for any net new construction. So if Senator Spilka's statement today, as read by our esteemed selectman, states that the state is not seeking any action to force for there to be new construction. The state is not going to pursue any action related to eminent domain, and it's Indian Brook's charter that states that you guys need to have a majority of residents to approve any net new construction, and the majority do not want to see net new construction. And the MBTA Communities 3A Act clearly states that it's the residents' choice whether or not they sell. So you're not being compelled to sell either. Then it sounds like you guys don't have anything to be concerned about, and your property values continue to increase because of the demand to want to move to Hopkinton. So if you choose to sell and want to sell, there isn't any action from the state that says you have to demolish your home. That's what I'm hearing today. And the preserve has a similar charter that says that the majority of residents at the preserve have to approve any net new construction. And so in that extent, to our chairman, we're trying to not have any net new construction to be paper compliant, and also make sure that property taxes don't have to go up to pay for any new capital projects for more schools. So that's what we're trying to do today, folks.
I appreciate the explanation. I just want to make it clear that while what you're saying is accurate on the surface right now, we have seen eminent domain take place for various projects in this town, including the Main Street corridor. And, you know, we just need to be, I think any resident needs to be cognizant of the fact that regardless of what's stated right now, in the future, you could see something for that.
Really respectfully, an easement and taking land for a 4-foot extension of a road is significantly different than somebody or an entire community losing their home. So I respectfully disagree with the analogy that this is respectfully, it's folks, this is not us trying to see you get pushed out of your homes. And I believe and I'm speaking for myself, but could reasonably assume that every member of the board believes that we're not going to see thrusts out of their homes. So respectfully disagree with the analogy.
That's fine, but I still, I as a resident in this particular location, I still need to do my due diligence. So I do appreciate your responses. I'm going to step down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Elise, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate that of course, I'm speaking for myself, but I don't think any of us want to see more development and more growth in town to this extent. And the reason why we picked these parcels is because we believe that you guys are happy in your areas. I personally live in downtown. I'm right next to one of the zones that's being proposed. And I hope that we don't see a large apartment complex come up in town, but part of the reason why we want to zone these areas is because we don't think it'll happen in these areas. And we believe that you guys are all happy in your homes, and we understand the worry, but we don't think that anybody's going to sell or want to have a majority of one of the apartment complexes sell out. And so nothing will happen, nothing will change as long as everybody stays where they are and doesn't sell out at once. So I also just want to reiterate the fact that it's not a rezoning. I keep hearing that, and I keep hearing fear from people that they're going to be pushed out of their homes. And that's not what this is. The state did a really bad job calling it what it is, because it really should have just been called a zoning overlay project. That's really what it should be called, because that's what it is. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Elise. Go ahead, Matthew.
Thanks, Rob. And I want to thank everybody who's been speaking and giving us feedback. It's very helpful, and we are listening. So thank you very much for everybody who's come online and given us information and stated your concerns and asked questions. One thing specifically to respond to is that neighboring plots that are not part of the overlay just aren't part of the overlay. They're not going to be eligible for the MBTA changes and the increased density. They're just not part of the zone. I'm looking at the map to confirm, but maybe John can just reconfirm that none of the properties neighboring Indian Brook would be affected. It looks like it's just Indian Brook. I know Elmwood was explicitly excluded because of concerns that it could be quickly redeveloped.
So that's true. None of the properties around Indian Brook were included. However, Elmwood was not included because it's town owned, and a purchaser would have to go through an RFP process.
Thank you, John. Stand corrected on that one.
John, would it be possible for me to share my screen? So I see there's a bunch of people in the queue to talk, but I think it would help if you kind of understand the financial situation of how these particular condo associations and homes could be redeveloped. So there's Walcott Valley, the Preserve, Indian Brook. So this is the district acreage, 14.8 for Walcott Valley, 22.9, 32.3. So any one of the couple plans we have before us that don't contain Carboni's restaurant, there'd be 222 units potentially built in Walcott Valley, 343 in the Preserve, 485 in Indian Brook. So if you go down here to row 15, the total units today, there's 66 in Walcott Valley, there's 40 in the Preserve, there's 112 in Indian Brook. And I just took this from like kind of Zillow and of what an average unit in each one of the locations cost, and did some math. So if the 66 units, so for a developer to buy the whole entire of the Preserve, the whole entire Walcott Valley, the whole entire Indian Brook, they're going to have to pay a premium. This is basically like just market dynamics. People, not everyone's going to want to sell their home at the market rate today. So to buy the whole entire complex, to redevelop the whole entire thing, it's pretty reasonable to expect they'd pay every condo owner a 50% premium. So if yours, so if you're in the Preserve and your home is valued at 600,000, for a developer to buy every single unit in that complex, the developer could expect to pay about 900,000 per unit. And then you start doing the math. And so for cost for a developer to buy the land to build one unit under MBTA communities in any one of these three parcels of land, these three associations, it's approaching, the Preserve is 119,000, Walcott Valley is 191,000, Indian Brook's 190,000. And I mentioned earlier, the developer of Legacy Farm said in Hopkinton, he should expect a developer would be willing to pay about 25,000 for land to build one unit. So we're approaching 4 to 5 times that at the low end of the Preserve. We're approaching 7 to 8 times that at Walcott Valley and Indian Brook. What I'm trying to show you here is a math example of why this isn't financially realistic for a developer to pursue. And okay, you could say, well, that doesn't take care of the eminent domain situation. Well, in that situation, the state would still have to pay the condo owners the market rate, and then a developer would have to pay the state, and they're not going to pay those rates because it's not financially viable. So in either case, whether it's eminent domain or developer buying the whole entire parcel, I don't see it as a financially viable opportunity today, and that's why these parcels were selected. So with that saying, I'm willing to come back to this at any time, but I'd like to, I'm going to stop my screen sharing, go back so I can see the board and take questions. Go ahead, Ellen, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Weinrub.
Thank you. It's Weinrub. You're close.
Thank you.
I live at Two-Way Bridge in Indian Brook. I've also been here 20 plus years, and this point in my career, ready to retire and plan to, my home is paid off and I plan on staying here happily for as long as I can. I've heard a number of times, both on last week's call and tonight, that, it would be impossible for a developer to buy out the entire complex.
Not impossible. It's not impossible. It's not financially realistic.
They wouldn't need to. They would only need to buy majority share to get control of the association. And once
they cannot force any owner out of their home at that point.
No, they certainly couldn't force. Well, they couldn't force anyone to sell. But if there was enough willing sellers and a willing developer with really deep pockets. I mean, granted, this is a big money transaction if this were to happen, but if there was big money to be made from it, we don't think it's inconceivable.
Through the chair. Can the town planner confirm if condos cannot add more units without the town's approval?
The condos were developed under special permits, the garden apartments and residential districts. So any new units would have to go before the planning board for an amendment to the special permit.
And we're not going to allow it. So we're not going to build any more units, even if a commercial entity wants to come in and buy them all up.
Wouldn't that be in opposition to the reason to put this overlay on the district?
No. This is why we're doing it, because you guys can't build any more units and we don't want to see any growth.
But we would no longer exist as an association, and the rules that the original developer had with the town would be null and void, is my understanding, if somebody got control of us. I mean,
because the developer would build at the consent of the planning board, and we would still have a final say to not allow any more growth. So we can go into hypotheticals with folks. This is the reason that we're doing this, is because when Ken Weissmantel made a very eloquent point the last meeting, which he said that a developer would love to see Carboni's property go up because they could develop that, and then we could potentially have more students, more need to take out more capital bonds for more growth in the schools, and nobody wants to see that. And even if a developer did want to come in, there's still guardrails against that too. So, I mean, I know I'm not going to change our mind because you guys are really militant about this, but we genuinely are trying to have the best interest of the town at heart, and that includes all members of all the associations, the condo associations.
Oh, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the hard place the town is in. But the exact reason that you think this is a good idea, that there is safety in numbers here, is probably the reason that it is causing a lot of stress in our communities, that we really don't have agency over the future of our homes, that a bunch of others would be involved in the decision. And if there were in our case, I think 76%, going to a developer or multiple developers, those that are left, which would be 1 in 4 of us, would not be able to sell our homes. So it's not an all or nothing.
I'm sorry, you've lost me. Can you walk me through that? So you lose your home, your ability to sell your home if a developer wants to.
And I'm sort of going to the concept of zombie condos that are going on in Florida, where developers want to take an aging property and all they need to do is buy the majority. They become then the association goes away in effect, and the developer runs the place. If they choose not to continue the sewage treatment plant or the electricity or the maintenance of the roads or other services, the people that live here, no longer belong to an association.
It's Ellen, I would go back to, it's not, in those circumstances, it might be financially viable for someone to do that. I would say where you live and these 3 condominium associations in Hopkinton, it's not financially viable for a developer to do that.
like if I'm a business owner, right, folks, and I have a $10 million capital bond that I've taken out to take out a project because I want to go and build a mixed use building. Am I going to choose the potential townhomes in Hopkinton, or am I going to choose a developable property that doesn't have condos on them? There are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of potential locations to choose across Massachusetts, and the downtowns is already zoned for, you know, higher density mixed use housing anyway, as we've seen with the hop drug that's going up. So if I'm like this enterprising CEO that wants to develop, am I really going to want to go to the pitchforks and torches of the Indian Brook or the Preserve or Walcott Valley Condo Association to try to create this? No, I'm gonna go for path of least resistance and vet a property that I have a chance at, you know, putting some of that capital and getting a return on my investment. Like that's what I'm doing if I'm a savvy business owner in my shoes. But I don't know. It's, again, we can only say this so many, you know, times and try to appeal to, you know, better angels. We don't want to see people taxed out of their homes. We don't want to see new growth, and we certainly don't believe the law as written. And as our senator's statement reiterated earlier, is creating any eminent domain action or mass action. And our chair just eloquently pointed out too that the business plan, the dollars and cents just don't make sense.
Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you, Rob. So I have a question. Where did the directive come from, or was that just our opinion? And just hear me out here for a second, that we don't want to see any more growth. Was that something that we just as a planning board kind of decided? Because what I'm thinking, I'll just complete this thought here and then let you respond, is that perhaps this is the question that we put up before the town, which is, here's your choice. Either we comply on paper with this particular way of doing it, you know, and apologies to them, whether it's the condos or it's something else, or taxes will go up, growth in the town, and we'll zone overlay, the terminology, I guess. Just for example, the Carboni land. So I'm not that familiar with all the plots. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, because I do know, I was doing some research on this today, and there is a $4 billion housing bond bill before the state legislature specifically for building contracts and things across the state. So they are going to put money into what they're doing. And as Parker, you know, had pointed out, Hopkinton is a very desirable town because of the school systems and things. So there's, you know, I'm not convinced that somebody won't try to come in and use some of the state's money and build something over Hopkinton. But going back to my original question of, should we put the question before the town about, okay, you guys want more growth, higher taxes, you know, and we'll rezone or ozone overlay something else, or do you want to try to keep taxes low, no more growth, no more new schools, and we'll go with this plan?
Through the chair, I agree with Karen, and I actually think she's spot on. The one thing I want to point out, though, that you're half correct on is the capital projects. That tranche of funding, the $4 billion for the bond, that is aimed at development that supports the development of MBTA communities properties. So, for example, the underlying infrastructure, like let's say the preserve, for example, which has a PFAS issue with their water. If Carboni's was developed, the preserve could take advantage of that $4 billion capital project, and a plan could put forth to secure funds from that to bring water down to then help them tap into, you know, city water. So then they didn't have, you know, PFAS in their water because it could potentially be clean. That could be a use case, for example, that the preserve can benefit. But Karen, I think you're spot on. That's the question: is do you want to see growth, or do you want to see paper compliance? I love that point.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, the state has not put up money to as through these bonds for building and constructing. It's for the
Okay, so yeah,
infrastructure.
that's fine. I will concede that point to you and Parker, but let's go back to the original question of, do we put the question before the town?
I think we will need to prepare some material for town meeting. I think, like, I guess I've been looking at it for so long, it's obvious to me that if, but yes, I don't think it's obvious to everybody else.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, yes, and Rob, you did a great job with the numbers, right? And there's the other side of it, of the numbers of if we do build, what it will cost the town, what it will cost us in schools and taxes and increases. So perhaps just laying out the numbers for the town and then saying, okay, you guys vote, you want, column A or column B.
Mm-hmm. Is it Stasha? Did you still intend to have your hand raised, or? Let's go to Eric Wieland.
Here we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hello, everyone. This is Eric Wieland, 13 Forest Lane, the preserve. I'm on the board here. I've heard a lot of things talked about tonight, which is great. And I appreciate everyone on the planning board speaking and offering their input. And I think, Rob, to your point, the financial aspect of it makes it highly unlikely that any of these properties would be developed. My problem is not the here and now and the present. My problem is, what's it going to be like 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road? I represent the people that live here in our homes, and we want to know that we're secure. I know you guys talked about eminent domain, and you talked about rezoning, and it's an overlay. I understand all that. What I'm asking you is, I want a letter from the governor telling me that our property is safe. That's what I'm looking for. You guys, I understand what you're doing. You're working for the town. You're trying to obey to give something to the state. I understand that. My problem is, what's the state going to say 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road? They go, wait a second now, what is this? Why did this town put up these properties that aren't getting developed? The whole spirit of the law is housing will be built. So I think you need to look at that aspect of it. Politics aside, it's the state's going to push back. I guarantee you. And I don't want to be that piece of property.
Real quick. So if we get a letter from the governor that says that they're not pushing for eminent domain or some sort of language, then you will support the MBTA communities at town meeting?
If they can guarantee it in what's it called, perpetuity or whatever it's called, sure. But I would like to know that I am safe.
Okay.
Period.
I appreciate the comment, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I thank you.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to point out, property rights and law predate the Constitution of the United States. I can't imagine any scenario where the government, as it is right now, could force somebody to, sell their homes in the way that people are discussing here, or compel people to build. They can incentivize to do it, with like a carrot, but they can't take a stick approach. So it's just, it's outside the framework of the way things work. So I wanted to point that out.
Vadi, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, could you just state your name and address?
Yeah, hi. This is Vadi. I'm from Preserve Community.
What's your last name?
Vadi Velan Adimulam.
Okay, and
Adimulam is the last
your address?
25 Forest Lane, Hopkinton.
Thank you.
Yeah, I live in the Preserve Community. Eric just spoke on behalf of us actually, and I'm just going to replicate what Eric said. I live in this community since 2021 actually, and I have a middle school going daughter. She's going to 6th grade in Hopkinton actually. She has her friends all over around our community, and we have friends all over the Highland Drive as well actually, and it's hard for me to convince a kid to that we are going to move out of this place actually. The thing is that and it's giving us a lot of stress also actually. I keep hearing different things from different people, and I'm frankly saying whether we are living in US or not. I mean, that's what I'm. I don't know how to express, but we think that we are living in a safe country, but this kind of rezoning is putting us into very unstable mindsets. That's what I would say actually at times. I even went through a lot of financial stress. I was part of a scam victim, and I lost around $300,000. I'm trying to recover that. That's all my life savings, and then you guys are putting additional stress on us, saying that we are going to rezone and stuff like that.
We have only one kid, and she is she's feeling. I mean, like if I move out from here, I mean, like I don't think we can buy house again in Hopkinton if it's going to give us like too much stress, and even the kid is going to get affected very badly. That is the biggest thing I would say, because I have all my friends, which we were in Boston before, we were in Malden, and all my friends from Malden moved here. So she had friends from 5-6 years back, so she has so many friends from there, so everyone is here, and if we are going to move out from here financially, mentally, we are really going to get affected very badly.
Yeah.
The only way you would move out is if you sold your condominium.
What is it?
Do you understand?
Sorry, what is it?
The only way you would move, no one can force you to sell your condominium. No one.
Yeah, but still, if 75% of the units decided to sell, and if we fall into the rest 25%, so we would be forced to move out, right?
No.
That could happen without MBTA's communities as well. So.
But nobody can force you to sell. Even if somebody bought the other 39 condos, nobody can force you to sell your condo.
Okay, so what we heard was like if 70% accepts, then they are going to take
us out.
Out. That's what I heard.
No, that is not. That is illegal. That cannot happen.
Mm-hmm.
You own your condominium. Anyone that would want to change the number of units in their association that has a mortgage, they probably would need approval to increase the number of units from their mortgage provider.
the condominium complexes that are there today to increase the number of units would have to come before the planning board. So that's not really realistic. So the only way a developer can really redevelop those properties is to buy 100% of the units. And if they buy 100% of the units, they're going to need to pay 150% or more of the market rate per unit to do that. There's, I don't know how to, I'm trying to combat what I would say is misinformation.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Vic, go ahead.
Thank you.
To the chat, Rob. Thanks, Rob. I was about to mention the same thing what you just mentioned, but Vadi, did I get the name right? So just to assure you, we as at now planning board committee members, we are putting every best effort out here to make sure that each one of you are safe. I can assure you that if, as Rob reiterated, I'm reiterating that, if you don't want to sell, then nobody can force you out. Nobody can do anything out there. It's you own that and you have the right on it. So don't go by what you have it, but please reach out to any of the board members or just John, the town planner, right? We are more than happy to walk you through this plan and explain, or shoot us an email and somebody would respond back to you with the right information. That's all.
Sharon, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. Sharon Reynolds, 6 Lehman Lane, Indian Brook. I spoke last week. Again, I have such appreciation for how much work has gone into coming up with zoning overlays that would work for the city, for the town. I really think that though there is still so much uncertainty about what could happen, that it's causing 218 households, all 3 of our condo communities in question here. It's causing the burden of uncertainty to fall on 218 households rather than the whole city bearing the burden of it, a whole town, sorry. I guess I would lean towards maybe more of a burden that's shared by more people.
That is, Sharon, so we know, or we have, if we were to pick properties that are underdeveloped, meaning whatever exists on that land area today is undervalued. A developer could make a financial business case to develop those properties and put up MBTA communities project. And that would result in people moving into those units, and it would probably result in school-age children. Like, we can't limit the number of bedrooms in any of these projects, so we assume it would result in school-age children. And we are cognizant of everyone's tax bill. Like right now, the average tax bill for a homeowner in Hopkins is $12,500. By 2030, that is going to $18,500. So if we add more school-age children to the school system over and beyond with the MBTA communities projects, it would either cause the quality of the schools to degrade by having more children per classroom, and in a school they don't really fit, or the town would need to build more schools, which would spread out that. And if this town voted yes on that, it would spread the financial burden to everyone. We are trying to find a path forward where it is not financially viable for a developer to build these units above and beyond what can be built today in downtown. And so we believe the developer won't pursue this. So yes, I understand your concern because it's your home. But we're trying to do what's best for the town and trying to put you in a position where you should not have this concern by answering any and all questions.
Well, I know so many of you keep saying, I just think that a buyer, a discerning buyer coming into this community, I agree with, I think Ellen said it, is going to want to look elsewhere. I would be looking elsewhere if I were educated about the issue, because if all of us are having uncertainty, a new buyer facing an uncertain, huge cost of buying a new place is certainly going to be concerned about these issues. So I have a couple of questions though. See, there's so many things we don't know. Wouldn't the state be offering some kind of funding for communities that actually develop their zoning overlays?
The state doesn't have, like, is it possible? Yes. Right now, we've talked about they are offering some money for infrastructure projects like potential I don't even can't think of a good example, but that's not actually constructing. It's not actually buying land, tearing down what may exist, developing the land into an MBTA project. They haven't allocated money for that. And to be honest, there's 177 cities and towns across Massachusetts that are MBTA communities. Like, where are they? It's just financially they can't. Across the board, they can't. Like, there's not enough money in the state to do that.
So the thing is, though, it's a meaningless exercise if these zone overlays can't really be developed easily. Isn't the state going to see that?
Through the chair, that's exactly correct. This is the medium, because if one side is doing nothing to address the housing crisis, and the other side of the token is to force and do eminent domain and the big scary things that we think is going to happen, this is the medium ground, which is, if you build it, they might come. Create these zoning overlays that if the cities and towns, which know their towns best and where to put these, potentially create them, then the state thought, well, you know, we can say that we're trying to fight the housing crisis, but the other side is that they probably knew, and talking to some of our elected officials, they're aware that, you know, we're probably just going to push for paper compliance. And so is it putting lipstick on a pig and trying to address affordable housing in the state? Maybe. But yeah, this is, I don't know if that kind of gets to what your point is, that this is really doing nothing. But for at least for the way Hopkinton's going about it, that's what we're trying to do.
But across 177 communities, there will be communities that will have like as a town, we've undergone tremendous growth over the past 10 years. So we feel that growth. Other towns may welcome the opportunity for growth in their town. We've just experienced a lot of growth in a very short amount of time, and we've had to take on quite a bit of Prop 2.5 override debt to build new schools. So we just don't want to increase that risk right now, would be my opinion.
I understand that. I really do understand the position that you're in and how hard you're trying to make this the most painless outcome for everyone, you know, for the majority of people. I did want to say just one more thing, which is that technically no one owner in Indian Brook can have more than 10 properties here, but if 8 developers got together, they could buy 75 units slowly over time and vote out the condominium because they'd have enough, they'd have 67%. And I don't know whether this zoning overlay would increase the likelihood of that. I mean, they may be able to do it now, but would there be something that would draw their attention to it or make it look more attractive?
Well, we covered this earlier, and John Gelser has talked about this, that even if that could possibly happen and you were the last holdout, that they have to go before the planning board and the town to be able to try and do any net new growth, to which I believe the consensus among the board is we won't allow it.
Even if they dissolve the condominium association? And it's no longer a condominium?
Well, so under you, like you as the owner of your condo, your home, they cannot destroy it. They cannot. They could not just like they can't destroy any common areas. They even if they have control over the association, that doesn't give them a right to your property.
No, but I'd no longer be under an association. They could dissolve it with 67% of the vote. It could be done over time, slowly. I mean, you know.
It would be, that would be a, if somebody realistically wanted to redevelop Indian Brook, they would go with a 100% approach of trying to buy out every condominium owner at once. Buying it over time is just not a financially attractive. Like, what are they going to do with all those units in the meantime? Like, that's just not financially
it's going to change the whole character of the community, though. If things change.
That's the only way. The only way I see it to be redeveloped is if a developer tried to buy 100% of the condominiums as they exist today, and he said, and was their approach.
But can the planning board veto something that 67% of the owners, if 67% of, say 67% owned by developers that got together and sort of, you know, agreed to do this thing, and they voted out the condominium, would the planning board still be able to veto what they wanted to develop?
They can't destroy. So your condominium was built under the major project site plan, and they can't destroy your condominium. Like John, can you help me with this? The technicalities here of like trying to build MBTA communities without dissolving the whole, like taking 100% ownership. I'm trying to relay this correctly.
All the condos were approved under garden apartment and residential district special permits. So when a special permit is on a property and say the condo association is dissolved and it is no longer a condo association, that special permit goes away. They could rebuild theoretically under that same special permit if they get approval from the planning board to do the exact same thing, though I don't know how that would really happen because the garden apartment and residential districts is not technically active because we're above our 10% for affordable housing, and that's a finding the board has to make. So you couldn't realistically develop a condo association right now under the garden apartment and residential district. So if you dissolve that, they're reduced to what you can do under the base zoning, which is for some of the condos agricultural, which means that you can do single family homes on 60,000 square foot lots. So if somebody were to take over and dissolve the condo association, they wouldn't be able to redevelop the condo in a different way without a special permit from the planning board, which is not active.
But if they didn't want to do condos, they could do something else without permission from the planning board?
They could do what's allowed under the base zoning.
Right. And how much would that be multifamily?
If MBTA communities is not adopted, no, it's not. They couldn't do multifamily.
So it would look more attractive if it was adopted. Okay. I know it's remote. I know these are all hypotheticals, but anyway, thank you for letting me ask these questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Sharon. Joyce, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Joyce Michelle of 40 Walcott Valley Drive in Hopkinton. And I just wanted to raise a more short-term concern because I know we've been talking about these long-term scenarios. I perked up my ears when somebody in the preserve said that a property had gone up for sale and a lot of prospective buyers were voicing their concerns that the overlay would undermine the value. Now, if that sort of thing continues to happen, then a place like Walcott Valley, which generally our property values have tracked very closely to some other complexes like Apple Tree Hill and Pinecrest. Now, those are not potential properties that are considered for the overlay. If our property is impacted and theirs aren't, then it could be that our properties would drop relative to those because those would become more of a magnet. I think somebody else was trying to say that earlier, is that people who would want to come into Hopkinton would preferentially perhaps go to the complexes that didn't have the overlay, and then the rest of us would suffer in our property values.
So I completely understand a potential buyer could have questions about MBTAs and communities and how it could impact a potential purchase, because they have, I'm sure any potential buyer would have questions. But what's going to happen? Well, so over time, if a developer does not move in, those questions will kind of dissipate because nothing will have happened unless a developer moves in. If a developer moves in, then they've bought the fundamentally the entire condo complex and every owner. And if they've done that, they've probably paid a hefty premium per unit owner to do that. So I get that there's questions currently from potential buyers, but over time, I only see this making the condominiums in the MBTA communities more valuable as opposed to less. Like if you thought about, like, just look at any house lot. Say you had two and a half acre house lots, and on those lots were $800,000 properties right now. So 1.6 million, 5 acres. And if a developer could put up 75 dwelling units for 1.6 million, those homeowners would get a lot more than 800,000. And I don't think it's going to do much. I don't think it's going to do much of anything to the property values. But if it did, the only potential I see is upside, not downside.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hey,
Sue.
Rob,
Michael, go ahead.
I just want to point out one thing real quick from the previous speaker, the one before the last one. She said that the entire town kind of isn't sharing the burden. Technically, right now we are. If we don't, comply with the law, grant funding is on the hook, and that's for the entire town. I just wanted to point that out and correct the record.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. Sue, go ahead.
There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Rob. I did not plan to speak tonight. And I think I first want to acknowledge the very difficult position that you guys are in. You are trying to make the best of something that nobody asked for, and frankly flies in the face of the best interests of the town in terms of inviting an influx of potential influx of new people to Hopkinton. I don't think there's an ideal solution here. And I agree that, at least speaking for my case at the preserve, I don't think our property is likely to be, quote unquote, taken over and developed in the near or middle term. I am convinced that an influx of new residents, a decline in the reputation of the quality of our schools, more stress on our infrastructure, and the higher taxes that are going to come with that are going to far more have a negative impact on my property value than the concern that prospective buyers may have about being in the overlay district. Having said all that, and I hope, acknowledging and really thanking you for all of your efforts. I respectfully caution the planning board from interpreting the provisions of the condo documents for these three communities as it relates to the dissolution of the association and the impact on the remaining unit owners and their physical units, as well as their ownership of those physical units. Every condo community is different. And I know, having served on the board, also with Eric for several years, that the degree of safety that you have stated that we have is incorrect. That is my only comment, and it's mostly just a caution, because it really makes me feel like you're pushing us a little too hard. And honestly, I was there with you, but
Would you like to share what is your perspective that is incorrect?
in our condo docs, there are provisions should 75% of the community decide to sell, that all unit owners will be required to sell. If the association is dissolved, even the 25% who do not want to have the association dissolved are required by the legal documents to go along with that. So what you were saying about no one can force you to sell your unit is incorrect. And if you would like to sit down with our legal counsel or with town legal counsel and review those documents, and I am incorrect, I would feel fine about you making those statements. But again, I don't think that you can make that interpretation of our documents. We are legally bound. Home ownership in a condominium community is very different from individual home ownership. There are conditions upon which we own or do not own our home. And that's all I want to say. Please be cautious about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
To the chair,
Who's that?
it's Laurie.
Lori, go ahead.
Could I have Sue's last name and address, please?
Sue, could you say your name and address for the record?
Yes, absolutely. It's Susan Curries, and I live at 29 Forest Lane.
Thank you. Lucia, go ahead.
Given what Sue said, and I appreciate everybody's comments, I'm wondering, can these communities amend their documents to increase the percentage of owners who need to agree to dissolve their condo associations before a sale can happen? And I know we have some of the presidents of the associations, so I think they would be willing to or able to speak on that potentially.
Yeah, if anyone is available to comment on that, it would be great. Eric, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I would like to answer that, but I just want to let you know I don't know. So I would have to go to our attorney and find out if that's true, Lucia. So I can't answer that tonight. I'm sorry. To change the condo docs, I'm sorry, to change the condo docs we would have to meet as a board. We'd have to decide if we want to do it. It may have to be voted by the community as well. I don't know, but there'd be a number of steps, and we'd have to find out if legally we could do it. So yeah.
All right, thanks, Eric. Indian Brook, is it Shay? I'm forgetting.
Yeah, Rob, it's Shane Diaz here. Yeah, so it's 2/3 vote physically in order for us to change the bylaws. So again, that's the residents who lives here has to physically vote. So we can always change the bylaws if necessary.
Shane, do you know if it require, like in general, my understanding to change bylaws on a condo association, like to increase the units, if an owner has a mortgage on it, a lot of times it requires the mortgage provider's approval as well. Do you know?
That's correct. And I already know Indian Brook, we are maxed out from a location point of view. We cannot add any more units because the surrounding lands in our community is all conservation land.
Thank you. Leslie, would you like to go? Or Leslie, go ahead.
Oops, sorry. This is Leslie. I'm on 19 Forest Lane in the preserve. I meant to lower my hand.
All right, no problem. Ellen Weinrobe.
Thanks, Rob. I have a question that maybe from the compliance model that we didn't look at this evening. What would be if the overlay did include Indian Brook, and in the improbable case that somewhere down the line a developer got a hold of the property, how many units could be built here?
At Indian Brook, if it was built under MBTA communities?
Yes. And assuming we were raised and they started over.
So if they demolished the 112 units today, under MBTA communities, they could build 485.
Yeah, and that, that number sort of goes to the financial feasibility if someone coming in, how many could they sell at, who knows what they would sell for and what year we're talking about here, but okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Was that you, Karen?
It's Laurie again.
Lori, go ahead.
Could I have Ellen's address, please?
Ellen, can you give us your address?
Certainly, 2 Weybridge Lane.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia, go ahead.
My follow-up question to both Eric, well, actually to any of the condo association presidents would be, can you then amend your condo documents to require 100% of the owners to agree to dissolve the condo association? And I ask that because people have brought up the issue of zombie condos in Florida. And so I read up on that. And what I read was that one of those buildings, it was 100% that were required to sell, and developers came in and took over the board and changed it and reduced the number or the percentage and essentially pushed out the other owners. And what's happened now is that the courts are involved, and they said, at this point, that's not allowed. 100% we're supposed to sell. And so it's in the courts right now, but that's a question that I have for the various condo associations. And I understand your concerns, and we hear them. And I'm just thinking in terms of, if we go forward with any of these options, they all include, condos or townhomes. So if it's the case that you can go and change that to require 100%, and if at this point the courts seem to be siding with the owners, then that would be something that if I lived in one of those communities, I would be pushing for my documents to change.
Thanks, Lucia. Igor R. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Igor Rubinstein, 49 Forest Lane again.
A couple of points, but that I don't think were mentioned as of yet. First off, for Robert, I believe you brought up eminent domain and that the state would have to buy the property at the full value. That historically is simply not true. Specifically, the state of Massachusetts is actually notorious for not paying full market value for the properties they acquire under eminent domain. That has been ongoing pretty much all the way since when we were just a colony. Second point I would like to bring up is that I can easily envision a scenario where the developer would not even require to buy enough votes to be able to dissolve the community to start driving the prices for the rest of the property significantly down. Case in point, Preserve pretty much has its own water, and if the developer has, say, 10 or 15 votes and starts voting against basically any attempt to spend any money to maintain that water system, our price will go down inevitably. Thank you.
Thanks, Igor. Is it Stasha? I know you spoke before, but Stasha, am I saying it correctly?
Oops, it's Stacia, but it's okay.
Stacia.
Nobody ever gets it right. So I just wanted to follow up with a single question. So it was brought up, and thank you, Shane, for bringing this up. We are surrounded by conservation land. One of the things that I'm well aware of with conservation land is that if there are certain guidelines that are met, you can build on that land. Does the MBTA overlay district in any way change the requirements for the conservation land, or put that, make it more appealing for folks to build there if they're able to offer affordable housing on that land?
So it's not possible for us to put conservation restricted land. And John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not possible for us to really have no, I know this for a fact. It's not possible for us to have conservation restricted land in our MBTA communities overlay district where it counts towards the acreage.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, John.
I think people might be conflating conservation land with wetlands as well.
Yeah.
Wetlands are still protected under the Wetlands Protection Act and the local bylaw. This does not change anything about that.
Yeah, and you're correct. It is wetlands. Okay.
Stacia, could you just give us your address again for
Oh yeah,
the minutes?
Sure. 7 Lilac Court.
Thank you. Martha, go ahead.
Sorry, I think I just needed to unmute myself. My name is Martha Lanning. I'm at 16 Forest Lane at the Preserve. Just a point to remind everyone, even though you say that you are certain that nothing will be constructed, the state is asking you to make these proposals so that they can construct new developments. The state intends to build. They are desperate for housing. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So, I don't think anyone said that it's cannot happen. We're saying what we think, or we're trying to give answers to questions and information. So making statements that are very, I'd say, inaccurate is, I think we're trying to give guidance of our opinions and the best we can. Michael, go ahead.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Parker.
The state, specifically the Senate president, provided a statement. I'd like to remind the previous commenter that the state is not pursuing any action of eminent domain to try to take properties. So respectfully, you are completely incorrect in that assertion. And I would also ask Igor if you can email me the instances of the Massachusetts taking property and not properly giving residents some sort of fair payment for that property. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll piggyback right off of that, Rob. Property rights in Massachusetts and the United States are old and significant. I was just reading on the state's website too, even if there's a dispute between a homeowners association where it dissolves and an individual resident, the resident has significant rights to protect their home. So I'm not 100% certain if everything we've been hearing so far has been accurate.
That I read that as well, Michael. Thank you. Sunny, go ahead. Sunny, just state your name and address.
Yeah, this is Sunny Lakshminarayanan, 2 Lehman Lane, Hopkinton. I just want to kind of differ a little bit on what Mr. Parker said. I think Chapter 79 of the Mass General Laws, it pertains to eminent domain. And actually, if you read Section 2, where no provisions is made by a law, a taking of land by eminent domain by or on behalf of the Commonwealth shall be made by the governor and council.
Point of order. Point of order. Sonny, the Senate president submitted a statement that said that currently the state, as part of 3A and MBTA communities, are not trying to, as part of this act, take land from owners. So respectfully, I totally understand what you're trying to say right now, but we are not asserting that eminent domain does not exist as a state statute. We're asserting that as part of 3A and the zoning overlay district, that the state is not trying to take property or use eminent domain in this action. So I understand what you're trying to say.
Correct. I think, Mr. Parker, only one thing is the laws change, the legislature changes. I think the
Sonny,
gentleman
I might
the
have
president,
a meteor that hits
please,
my house.
if I can actually comment on it,
Sonny,
I believe.
Hold on.
I think the chair. I think
Sonny,
I have the right to comment, right?
No, you don't. Not unless I give you it. Direct all commentary to the chair and try to do it respectfully. That's what I'm trying to do. Go ahead, Sonny. If you'd like to speak, you need to unmute.
Yeah, I think Mr. Parker interrupted me, Chair. I was speaking, actually. So I'm not sure whether as a public, as I have a right to speak. I believe I do.
If the chair gives you that
I think you
ability.
did. I think you did.
If you want to be combative, we can move on. Like what is your point?
I think the point is there is eminent domain. The laws can change in the future. The legislature can change. So right now, the Senate president can give the letter, doesn't mean the law is going to remain the same. So even the president of the other Windsor community indicated that what's in the future for us. So I think that's the point we are trying to make. So today the law can be this, but tomorrow the legislature can make a change.
Sonny, that goes for any resident in Hopkinton. That goes for any resident in the state. They could take my home by eminent domain, and they could change zoning, and just the state could say, we're going to change zoning on this parcel of land, and I would have no control.
Very true. I agree. The only thing I'm saying is you cannot really confidently say that it cannot happen, though, right? So as a resident, I am concerned.
I understand your concerns. Is it realistic? Is it a realistic concern? You can make that judgment for yourself. I don't see the state going around taking people's homes, especially 40, 60, 100 plus homes, and displacing those individuals when it's not when a developer that actually builds homes can't make a business case doing it. It's just not logical. So yes, anything can happen in the future. I don't know how to ease your concerns, but I think you just need to look at the facts of the situation and try to come up to your own conclusions. Leslie, go ahead.
Hi.
Leslie Garber, 19 Forest Lane, The Preserve. Just to piggyback on what Sunny just said, I mean, look at what they did to those 3 towns in Quabbin. That they needed water. Those 3 towns were flooded. I mean, I know that was a long time ago and rights have maybe improved, but I'm just saying there are examples of the state taking land or doing things when it's just not going their way. So I'm not going to argue anymore, but I just feel like
so I don't disagree.
Convince us.
I don't disagree that the state has taken land in eminent domain cases for public infrastructure like drinking water, like highways. Have they done it often to demolish homes to build other homes? Very rarely, and only if the existing projects are, or like the existing homes are beyond repair, unoccupied. They use the term blighted. That's the only time it's really ever happened. So that they're not in that. That's not what they use eminent domain for. Could it change in the future? Anything. I think everybody knows anything could like that could happen in the future. I don't want to tell you it can't, but is it realistic? I think you'll have to make your own judgment.
Right, and I think that's what we're doing. We're trying to say that we're not willing to take that chance. Thanks.
Matthew, go ahead.
Thanks, Rob. I know it's been a couple of hours of talking about this. We've been talking about 2 years, but I just want to ask my fellow board members to the public input is critical, and we've been getting a lot of it the last couple of weeks. And just I would ask fellow board members to be permissive and letting everybody talk and listening. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Sunny, would you like to go?
I'm sorry. I think I forgot to lower my hand. Sorry.
That's okay. All right. Eric, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Eric Whelan, 13 Forest Lane. I'd like to make a recommendation to the board right now. The planning board that I'm speaking to, I think all of you should recommend some type of option back to the state. I'm not saying a no, maybe an extension or something like that, because I really think right now selecting properties that people live on is not a good option. And I understand, I've sat through a number of your meetings. I understand why you don't want to select other properties because they're going to get developed, and we don't want that in this town. But I really believe, and I'm trying to say this to you, we do not want to be an overlay district, and we will fight that. And I just think you need to take that message back to, I don't know if you do this at a town meeting or you go to the select board first, but that would be my recommendation, and that's how I'm going to leave it at this point. But thank you for all your work.
Thanks, Eric. Michael, go ahead.
I mean, anybody that is speaking in this meeting obviously can come to the open meeting we're going to have when we vote on this and vote for it or vote against it. But the state can pull grant funding away from the town. They could make the cost of not complying with the law rise over time. And you have to consider the dynamic that's going to cause if things in town are deprived of money over time. I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Michael. So I don't see any Elise, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, worst case scenario, the state could take all of our funding away and come in and say, you know, Hopkinton submitted a plan that we already approved of, so let's just go with that plan, and we have no control over that. and they could implement the zoning overlay and take our funding away, and we would have no control over that.
Thanks, Elise. I want to be a little cautious. Like a number of people, we've been talking in the public comment and even on the board have been talking about hypotheticals. And yes, there is the future is unknown about just kind of everyday life. So I get that.
Through the chair, I just want to point out something. The hypotheticals that a lot of people were talking about tonight were true hypotheticals. The state did say that they would take grant funding away from people that don't comply with this law.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Michael.
That's not hypothetical. So,
Vic, go ahead.
Just wanted to call out. This is a voting process which needs to be done through the town. If the town says a no to it, then we might land up as saying that, taking the funding away, whatever the consequences with the town as a whole have to face it. But again, it's the town's decision. So that's all we're trying to say, that we're trying to put our best effort out here. But at the end of the day, it's the town that has to take the decision on this. But I don't think so that if the town says no, the state would force it back to us saying that do it or look, you have to go with this. I'm not sure if that's true.
I don't know if that's the part that is kind of the hypothetical. Like, if the town was to vote no at town meeting, what would happen thereafter? Any scenarios besides getting grant funding taken away and potentially getting sued after that is hypothetical. We don't know what would happen after those two things are pretty certain to happen. After that, we're not sure. Sharon, go ahead.
Sharon, you're on mute.
Sharon Reynolds, 6 Lehman Lane, Indian Brook. No, I just want to say again, I hear all this. I feel badly. But I don't want to be one of 218 households bearing the burden of uncertainty about this. I feel very strongly about it, as I know many, many people here do.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. Eric, did you have your hand is still raised? Do you have anything additional?
Eric, you might be on mute.
I think a hand maybe was just remained raised. I think I'll restate what I said at our last meeting. And for everybody's benefit on the call, the MBTA Communities Act was something done at the state level. Nobody on the planning board went out to try to establish MBTA Community Overlay District on our own. We've been handed this requirement to come up with what we view as our best proposal and put it before town meeting. And so that's what we're going to try to do. And I totally understand everybody's concern that's on this call. I totally understand the thousands of other people that live in Hopkinton that would be impacted, and even everyone on this call would be impacted if we had a lot more school-age children in the next 5 years. And that's why this is so hard to come up with a proposal that ideally we'd have a proposal everyone liked and everyone loved. But that's really has proved very hard to establish and very hard to come to that consensus. And so we're trying to make the best of what I would call a very difficult situation. And so that's what we're doing. So as a board, we're going to discuss what our path forward here is, but I'd like some input from the board of what they see as our in my mind, I would rule out the two proposals that include the Carbonis properties. So that leaves the proposal with Indian Brook and downtown, and the proposal with Walcott Valley and the preserve and downtown. Does anybody want to debate including the proposals that include Carbonis property?
I put through the chair.
Go ahead, Parker.
Yeah, I think we put one of the new ones and then the old one. And for the justification that Karen eloquently laid out earlier, which is the choice is we either develop or paper compliance. That's my thought. I know I said last meeting that there could be concerns and confusion at town meeting for different proposals, but I think there's a clear enough delineation between potential for net new construction in the immediate or paper compliance.
Go ahead, Lucia.
So in terms of your question of not including the original plan, I would not be prepared at this point to say that I support that, because my thought in this meeting is that was voted down at annual town meeting and there were questions. I went back after the last meeting and before this one and I rewatched that portion of annual town meeting and there were questions, and some of those questions weren't really answered, and potentially being able to answer those would change people's votes. And one of the issues that people brought up was, well, we have time. So we can come back to a special town meeting and we can vote on whatever it is that comes to special town meeting. And so now we are here. And I think the question before us is, are the other options better than what was put forth at annual town meeting? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
Okay. Karen, go ahead.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm going to jump on the Vic bandwagon of, as I mentioned before, just putting it before the town. Either, and I don't know whether the proposal that you've identified is the one to go, but then there should also be the one of just developing and all the impact that will have on the town. That said, if we look like we're running up against the wall with the December 31st, I don't think it's a bad thing to go to the state and say, hey, we are working really hard to get this done. Can you give us an extension? Where our intention is to comply. I think that's an okay thing to do, and it would also give us a little bit more breathing room if we can do that. So I don't know what the vehicle is for doing that, but
I don't think that is an option. I think
why?
the only because we would be non-compliant. I think we have to put together.
I understand that, but we have two. We have two potentially compliant options on the table. One is that's going to be we'll just develop it and expand the town. The other one is, from our own terminology, kind of paper compliance. So, but we need time to develop these two to put them before the town. So okay, state, we have these two proposals. We just got to get that'll put us in compliance. We just have to get it before the town and prepare for this. So, I don't see why not ask. It's a question. They can easily say no because you'll be out of compliance. So, forget it. You either do it by December 31st or not. So, but I don't see any downside to asking for an extension.
So, I really don't even know how that would work, to be honest.
So my statement kind of dovetails on that too. Rob, could we get partial credit if we just put through the center of town? Probably not, but good faith, right?
So not having not having a voted on plan that's passed town meeting by the end of the year would kind of trigger a couple things. It would trigger us being non-compliant, which would potentially stop any grants we have. And it's very unclear how much money that really is, but that is generally just not a good place to be. Number two, it would probably trigger action from the Attorney General to sue the town. And to be honest, I don't know what that would really look like or how that would work. I think the only option we have tonight is to put our best plan together that gets voted on a town meeting. And if town meeting can vote yes or town meeting can vote no, I don't think we should withhold that right from the voters of town.
No, I don't think so either, but I also think if they all vote no with us not being prepared, then you're going to face the same ramifications that you just outlined, which is non-compliance and withholding of grant money. And I think it's important that we know how much that grant money is, but I mean, I don't see, again, any downside. I mean, they can easily say no, and then we're just stuck. We don't get any extension. But we are working very hard. This whole team and the public and everybody are working very hard to get us into compliance. So I don't. Yes, I understand that the Attorney General would probably sue us and stuff like that. But the wheels of justice move slow, and what are they going to sell? They're going to sue us because we're slow. I mean. By the time they got around to doing a lawsuit, we would probably be in compliance because we could have gotten something past the town meeting. So it's not that we're not doing it. It's just we just need more time.
Thanks, Karen. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, I should have put my hand. And I was going to ask John. Actually, I don't want to put him on the spot, but. Does he have any kind of insight into what people at the state are saying about what's going to happen to the towns that aren't in compliance by the new year?
I mean, we've gotten no concrete guidance on that, but we do know that we would be ineligible for funding. We'd be considered non-compliant, and we open ourselves up to a lawsuit.
The other thing that I was wondering about, sorry, I just had one more question, Rod, then I'll defer. So grants. I know a lot of stuff at the school is funded by grant. Is there anything in the law that says that funding wouldn't be affected by us not being in compliance with MBTA communities?
No. So the guidance we've gotten from the state is there are 13 grant programs that have identified compliance with MBTA communities as a decision criteria metric. And those are in the presentations. I've listed those. I've talked to the planner in Milton, who Milton is currently non-compliant, and they have had grant funding from 2 grants that were not listed in that list clawed back. And the state has also provided guidance that any grant program that has compliance with all Massachusetts laws as a decision criteria metric would make the town would be ineligible to receive those grants as well. So we really don't know what grants we would be ineligible for unless we looked at the decision criteria for every single state grant that's available, and that's just impossible. So we know what the state has explicitly told us, but we don't know the other ones because we can't look at every single grant program in the state.
So this could be significant then?
Potentially.
Okay, thanks, John.
Matthew, go ahead.
One of them is the MWRA or MassWorks grant, which Burlington used for significant funding for their MWRA connection, which could further push us back connecting to that with our plans there. And I know town meeting was not happy about spending more money on our existing solution as we're waiting for that. On the idea of alternatives for town meeting, one of the options that kept being raised as town meeting wanted a choice. I mean, it's the people's choice, right? So I think it makes sense to try and give them good choices. If we can find 2 choices that we think are good. We don't have the ability to come up with a completely new solution, such as undeveloped land. But I think what we identified last time is the closest options were one of the Carboni solutions, one of the non-Carboni solutions as being possible ways of looking at that. I do have concerns about not including the previous and approved solution, previous and approved plan, as we know that one has been accepted as a surefire way of being accepted by the state. And that level of confidence may be something that's meaningful to the town voters.
Thanks, Matthew. So I am very against, just to give you my opinion, I'm very against including any proposal that includes the Carboni's property. I think I think that serves nobody's interest. There's going to be people that are going to not want that proposal because they see it as a proposal that could generate more school-age children, which would increase their tax bills, and it would also include condominium owners in the and they in general, the voices we've heard on these calls, they don't love it. So I don't see how that serves anybody's interest. And I would not vote for it myself. So I don't know what the board wants to do. Like, I am of the mindset that there's two proposals that don't include the Carboni's property, and all of the residents that aren't on this call, whose tax bills would be, and even the people that are on this call, their tax bills would be somewhat protected, is our greater interest. And it's just a matter if they attend town meeting. Jane, go ahead.
Well, I agree with some of our fellow members earlier in the meeting, saying that if we put two proposals forward, it's going to be very complicated and confusing for a lot of people. I would like to go with the proposal that you had put forward last time, the paper compliance with the high density, and I think also we need a paper handout at the town meeting, because even though we're going to show some slides or have a presentation, people don't always take in all of the information. And if they had a pamphlet of some sort that not only showed the slide so folks could follow along with that, but also show the risks. And I know another mention was people were thinking that we're just jumping into this and we're not really thinking it through. But we have been talking about this and having a lot of heavy conversations, and John has had multiple meetings with the state. And I think if we also did a timeline to show just how much time and effort that we have put into this, and this is not just a willy-nilly idea that we're throwing out there just to become compliant, but that really have thought of as many possible risks as we can for the town, and try and present a clear picture as possible. I know a lot of people aren't going to be happy, but it's at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the citizens who show up at the town meeting to ultimately decide. And our responsibility is to share the reason why we're either I would prefer one, but if the board really thinks that two would be better, I think we have to go with something. I don't think we can really ask for an extension. It's just too risky in my mind.
Thanks, Jane. I definitely don't want a scenario where there's one proposal there's multiple proposals before town meeting. And so we have residents from multiple different areas attend, and they're voting for one because it doesn't impact them in their backyard. It would, in turn, they're voting against their neighbors. I think that's just not in the best interests of our community. Michael, go ahead.
I think we could probably, and I liked what Karen said before, and then Parker kind of added on to it too about, the contrast that we would get from two, one that's more development heavy and one that's paper compliance or low impact. We could probably get the same effect though if we kind of described the consequences of kind of the worst case scenario one while not putting it forward, and then just bringing forward a single plan that has the lowest impact and explain, why we chose the one that we're putting forward. So I think we could probably get the effect of having that contrast as long as we, describe what the alternative would be to what we're putting forward.
I don't know that it's clear, but like I feel like we need to come to a vote tonight of what we're going to put forward for town meeting. We are out of time. Like that's my, like our town meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. We have no more time to meet, discuss. We have to put together what the warrant article is going to consist of. And it's going to be voted on. And so you could vote, you have your vote, and we're going to need to make a motion. We're going to need to do it. So what I'm trying to get to is kind of informally doing straw polls by getting people's opinions, but that's what we need to get to. Elise, go ahead.
I'm just thinking out loud here, though. The way town meeting works, if we had two proposals potentially, whichever one is first is the one that's going to get voted on. So, I mean, it's not like we can go to town meeting and say, here are our options. What do you like better, A or B? Like, it has to be a warrant article. So we would have to have two articles if we're voting on two different things.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, we have one article. Basically, it would be presenting however many options. So we have 4 proposals. You could send theoretically 4 proposals to town meeting. And then the motion that would approve the article would reference the proposal that would be chosen. We talked with town council about that. They actually thought that was cleaner than doing 2 separate articles because, like you said, if we did 2 separate articles, you'd have one would have to get voted down and then move to the second, or you would accept this first and then vote down the second or skip over the second. And so you also wouldn't be able to discuss the articles together. You wouldn't be able to compare them as part of the discussion if you had 2 separate articles, unless the moderator allowed that. So they thought town council thought it would be cleaner to do one article, and the motion would specify the proposal being voted on.
Is it already written up? Do we have the verbiage for it?
Yeah.
Would it be worth
pretty generic? Would
it be worth our time to hear it? Do other members of the board want to hear what it would sound like, or just me? If it's just me, I can talk to you separately.
The motion would just be to see if the town would approve adoption of the, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it would be to approve the adoption of the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District for the area familiarly known as, and then whatever what we've been calling it would be listed, and to amend the zoning map with those subdistricts. It would be pretty general of a motion and of an article.
I can share my screen and show you what the motion, what it officially looks like. So here, Article 8, MBTA, to see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 210 zoning bylaws to insert a new article entitled MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District, Article 35, Neighborhood Mixed Use District, and to amend the zoning map to include the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District as shown on the map on file with the town clerk. hereof fail not, and make the due return of this warrant with your doings thereon to the clerk of said town of Hubbard at the time and place aforesaid. So this part right here. It's very generic. Lucia, go ahead.
I want to make an argument to drop from consideration Walcott and Carbones, that plan that includes those two. And my reason for that is in choosing that, we would essentially be swapping one community for another, which I don't think that makes sense personally. But also we would be reducing the amount of land near the commuter rail station, which has benefits in the long term if they do get developed, to where we have walkability to the commuter rail and potentially less vehicular traffic in the center of town, which Walcott would increase.
So let me repeat what I think I heard. You don't want to consider one of the plans that includes Carbones, which in that plan, which also considers Walcott Valley.
Yes, if we're trying to make a decision, then I say we drop that from consideration for the reasons that I said.
Okay. I am on board with, I think I already stated, I don't want to include any proposal with Carbones property. I can go around with a straw poll. Elise, what do you think about Lucia's recommendation?
I like it. I also agree that I don't want to include the Carbones property. I don't know. I'm like really, I'm having a hard time making a decision here. The only thing I know for sure is that I don't really want the Carbones property to be involved.
Thank you. Matthew.
I also agree to the extent that it kind of leaves a small island isolated in the north part of the town. I also not to shift properties, but it may make sense as an alternative at town meeting. But Indian Brook, in my mind, just the traffic, if that were to be developed, just seems like a mess.
Michael.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I said it in the last meeting too. I don't think Carbones should be considered because it, cuts against the interests essentially of everybody in the town.
Parker.
I disagree. I think we should include it and then have a different plan and market them. So one is the growth and one is the paper compliance.
Jane, I think you already kind of stated your opinion, but you want to restate it?
Yeah,
or?
I'll just reiterate again. I don't think we should take the risk and include the Carboni property. So I believe then it would leave two options, and I prefer one, but two will do the trick as well.
And Karen, what is your opinion? Like you stated earlier, we should go to the state to ask for more time, but how do you think we should proceed?
That aside, thank you. That aside, I'm going to stick with my original proposal and with what Parker said. I think I would personally, I would show up at town meeting and I would vote against the Carboni one, but I do think it should be presented in terms of here's the growth and here's the paper compliance. It's a good contrast, and if you have a good number of, if you get the town comes out and my heart would go out to those. If it ended up being the overlay on top of the condos, then I certainly understand their perspective and heard all of them tonight. But if the rest of the town came out and said no to the Carbones and yes to the other one, then again we leave it up to the town, let them decide. That's who we're representing here. let's not make a decision specifically ourselves.
Vic, go ahead.
Let's leave the Carbonis aside.
Okay. Lucia, did you have your hands is up?
Yeah, sorry, I thought it was just specific to Walcott and Carbonis. I don't necessarily agree with taking both of the plans with Carbonis, which is why I made the suggestion that I made so that we could at least get down to 3 plans. But I will say I agree with Matt in that I do think Indian Brook is the worst option out of the 4. And that's because it would impact the most number of existing residents if it were to get developed. And also then you have 0 land close to the commuter rail station. And that was the purpose of the MBTA Communities Act, is to require communities near public transit routes to add zoning per President Spilka's office's statement.
Okay. So I think we got a general, at least 5. I think there was really above 5 that agreed with your statement. I think there was 7 actually that agreed with your statement, Lucia, to not consider that plan to move forward. The one with Walcott Valley and Carbonis. So we're down to 3. I think we heard from several people not to include Carbonis properties at all. I think that was Vic, Elise, Jane, myself. Was there a 5th person?
Yeah, I supported not including them too.
So that would give us 5 out of 9 that don't want to include Carbonis properties. So that leaves two remaining proposals. Well, before we do that, I think I've only heard from 2 people that wanted to include multiple proposals with Karen and Parker. Is there anyone else that wants to go to town meeting with multiple proposals? Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I as I've said, I think it makes sense. So last town meeting, people asked for an alternative. They said that, they wanted to see alternatives, and several people voted down saying that they wanted to see an alternative. I think there is a benefit in using the one that's been approved by the state as a level of confidence versus an alternative that's distinct enough to explain why.
So I think people that were looking for an alternative wanted to find a proposal that didn't include their property. I
disagree in some of the cases, and I can send you some quotes.
I don't know that I need quotes, but I think the general sentiment is there was two primary reasons people objected to it. 1, they didn't want their own properties included, and 2, they didn't want readily developable land to be in the proposal. Like I don't know of any other significant. So yes, either one of those things could have been looking for an alternative proposal. I just am concerned about people, say we had 2 proposals and it's literally would cause a scenario where residents from one where they live, they'd vote one way, and the other residents where they live somewhere else would vote the other way, and you'd literally have the situation of neighbor versus neighbor depending on where they lived across town meeting floor. That's how I see it playing out.
And I think that's right. And I think that they're going to cancel each other out and people are going to make the right choice, which is why we should do the original and then coalesce around an alternative. Because I think people are intelligent, and I'm not insulted to intelligent folks who disagree with the merits of having an overlay district, but I think people can ascertain the risk associated with it and realize that then it's just NIMBYism and settle on the correct one, which is not having growth, because we are fatigued of additional growth at the town. And so I think the question isn't which of the two, absent the Walcott Valley, I think the question is which one, absent the Walcott Valley Carbones proposal.
Matthew, go ahead.
So Rob, respectfully, I disagree. There was at least 5 people that said they voted down purely because they disagreed with the process. There were several people that said they wanted to go back to town meeting with more time, that was under less of a time crunch. And there was actually a mix of people that were fine with Carbones and people that were against Carbones. So I think you're misremembering how universal the criticisms were.
I do remember the sentiment that people felt underinformed. I don't know how to combat that because it's going to happen at this town meeting. There's people that are going to come to town meeting that are going to feel underinformed of this process when we've had meetings about it for 2.5 years. And there's only so much we can do. We can talk, like the newspaper can talk about it. We have our meetings. The zoning advisory committee has their meetings. There's still going to be people that are going to show up at town meeting that are going to be underinformed. I don't know how to combat that.
The best we can do is present our rationale, as we've been saying. But I also think that generalizing on a subset of the concerns is why it didn't pass, or what the objections were, I think is neglecting a large part of the town's uneasiness and concern. It's much broader than I think you're putting out there.
I think there's general sentiment that, yes, I think I started this meeting by saying we didn't go pursue this zoning overlay. So yes, there's residents in town that don't want it, period. And they're willing to fight it in court. I firmly believe there's people that are like that and that feel that way. I don't know how to address those concerns. Like, that is just, they think that the state is trying to take away power from the town. And I don't know what to say really to help that. Karen, go ahead.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I think I could get on board with just one proposal at town meeting, but I do think it needs to be explained in terms of why we specifically chose that one, and essentially have on paper what an alternative might be. Not that they get to vote on it, but this is the one we're putting forward. And here's, if we were to go forward with something that was developable, something like that, then this would be the impact to the town, right? In terms of the schools and the taxes and things like that. The comparison has to be made. And it is, I mean, like I said, I really did like the spreadsheet you had. It's a numbers game, and I think people have to take a look at that and then let the town decide. I mean, in doing some research, I was looking at some of the other towns, mostly the ones right along the 135 route, and I think it was Weston had actually put out a survey to the town and asked a number of different questions, and it is published on their website. And one of the questions was, to your point, said, how many of you are willing to, go for non-compliance and suffer the ramifications of, no grants and potentially being sued? And that was literally, it was 51%. So it was a majority, not by much, but it was a majority. And that was they were completely willing. And then another, 17 or something % were somewhat willing. But so again, I think, it's not, I don't think it's something we need to fear, but I do think it's something we need to put in front of the town in terms of what, just be very clear. If we are not compliant, this is what we will lose, and so you guys want to vote it all down and not vote for something, then fine, then this is it. But you can't force people to do something that's good for them, if you know what I mean. So.
They do. Lucia, go ahead.
So I think what I'm hearing is that some people want the original plan as an option, as one of two, potentially. and some people want the quote unquote paper compliance. So in terms of the paper compliance, I think Indian Brook is the worst option. So I'm gonna basically push for a straw poll to say, can we take that off the table? Unless somebody wants to argue for including Indian Brook as the option.
I can go around. Does anyone have a strong opinion that they? Elisa, you're okay with eliminating that proposal?
Just to be clear, we're talking about number 2.
The one that's Indian Brook in downtown.
I don't know. I feel I'm really torn, if I'm just being very candid here, because I think the preserve is a good option, but we've heard from so many residents who are avidly against it, and it was brought to town meeting and turned down. So I'm just having a really hard time making a decision here. That being said, I do think downtown is the perfect option because it's already zoned for this, so nothing is changing by adding downtown, but downtown isn't all of the options, so that doesn't help.
Okay.
So Rob, if
Go
we
ahead,
take
Jane.
out the Indian Brook one, does that only leave one option?
No,
Still has-
that would leave the original one from town meeting last year.
But that
And-
has Carbonis, doesn't it?
Yes,
Didn't
and
we already say?
I think we have already 5 people that don't want to include the proposal with
Right.
Carboni. So
And then if we take out the Indian Brook, which
that
is
would
fine,
only
I think
leave
it's a-
that would leave
I think it
that would
leaves one.
leave the proposal with Walcott Valley, the preserve in downtown.
Yep. I think we have our answer if people want to go along with taking out Indian Brook, which I think common sense wise, it's the most further removed from the MBTA site, and it would be a traffic nightmare.
So we need to get to 5 people. That's the reality. We need to get to 5 people to agree to a vote here. I'm of the mindset to have one proposal. I don't agree with having multiple proposals. It makes us. I think having one proposal, we put our best foot forward, and I think any of these parcels, because they've been debated, are within the 4 corners of the warrant article. So those motions could be made on the floor. I don't think we can include parcels that haven't been debated on the floor, on the town meeting floor. So
Are we not going to show the original plan?
I don't
At town
know.
meeting?
If it's not being considered, I would not know. Like we could, but I don't know why we would.
I
Just
think we're
to-
going to have to, because we're going to have to show what's different. And if we show what's different, then people are going to want to have a voice on it. And people are going to say, I just, if we're already going to show it, give folks that wanted more information a chance. And then we'll probably end on the one that we choose based on the board meeting today. It's like, I'm in sales, guys. Like, this is what I do. That's probably why some people in the commentary section didn't like me earlier for interrupting. It's because you present and do this in pricing exercises. You do the one, you jack up the price on the one that you don't want to have them go for, and then you incentivize the other one. It's like we show, hey, this one's more taxes, more students, more, and then we make an educated decision as a board on the one that we should go for. Like and that's what hopefully we land on from groupthink at town meeting. And because I think otherwise people are going to feel like they don't have a choice, which is what people wanted before. And they're going to want to see the original one anyway. And some people are going to ask why we're not voting on it if they have the clarification. But I don't know. That's my thought.
I mean, can't we kind of do that? We can, present both of them, but say this is the one we support, the second one. I don't think there's any rule that says we can't talk about one that we're not putting forward, right, Rob?
John, is that possible? Could we show two plans but say this is the one we recommend?
I mean, it's context, right?
Something
I
to
would
that.
not recommend presenting a plan that is not something the planning board has put forward for town meeting votes. So the board can move two proposals forward to town meeting and recommend town meeting approve both of them, or one of them, or none of them. But I would say if the board is looking to put a proposal before town meeting that they have not voted to move before town meeting for consideration, that's just going to be confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, so Parker, like we would need to put it like before town meeting, and we could put language that we did not recommend the one that included Carbonis for approval, and we could put language that we recommend the other proposal for approval, but they would both be eligible for a vote. Which, John, any of these parcels, could, in your opinion, I think they're within the four corners of being allowed to be amended into the article at town meeting? Do you think that, or have any opinion on that?
So town council has said that the parcels that have been advertised can be recombined into a proposal, which is what we did with the Walcott, Downtown, and Preserve. But on the floor of town meeting, I mean, that's changing a map that would not exist for people to look at. It would be creating a proposal that does not exist. So, I mean, I would strongly recommend the board not open up town meeting floor to amending any proposals, because I mean, if people start putting parcels together, we have no way of confirming it meets the criteria that MBTA communities requires, the 50 acres, the 15 units per the total district, and the unit capacity. I mean, if people start putting parcels together, we could pass something that's not compliant.
Okay, I agree. Matthew, go ahead.
I was just going to strongly agree with what John said, both in this statement and the previous one. If we're going to compare what we presented in May, and somebody's going to ask, why is this different? I think it should be one of the options, and whether we recommend that one or not is something that we can discuss. And it sounds like the board's leaning in one direction there. But I think having them predefined as part of the motion as option A or option B just makes everything a lot easier, rather than trying to explain it on the floor and work with it ad hoc.
All right, let me try to get to a consensus here. So I think we can limit it to these two scenarios. One scenario, scenario one is we just propose Walcott Valley, the Preserve, and the downtown area. That's scenario one. And we recommend that for approval. Scenario two is we propose the original plan from town meeting months ago. We don't recommend that for approval, but we also include the option of Walcott Valley, the Preserve, and downtown. And we do recommend that zoning map for approval. Does anyone want to pursue anything else than those two plans?
So my preference would still be the original assessment, but if there's the original proposal, but there's 5 people that don't like that, then that makes.
So you'd like to recommend the original proposal?
I would, just as an alternative, yes.
Okay.
I think that the certainty there helps, and I still think it makes more sense in terms of just the map itself.
All right, let's try to go around to get to when you basically we're going to have one proposal. So option A is one proposal with Walcott Valley, the preserve in downtown. Option B is two proposals, one of which we recommend, one we're not going to recommend. So option one proposal. I'm going to go around. Elise, do you prefer option A with one proposal or option B with two?
I think right now I prefer one.
All right. Lucia.
I would prefer two proposals, although I stated that, you know, I'm not for dropping the preserve, the original plan.
Okay. Matthew.
I'm for two proposals.
Michael.
Given what John said, now I'm for two proposals too. I think we should do the original and then the one that we prefer and say which one we prefer.
Parker.
Two.
Jane.
I guess two would show the contrast between the two.
Karen.
Two.
You guys should all be up in front of town meeting. Vic.
Abstain.
We can all stand up there with you.
We'll be right behind you, Rob.
Yeah. And Rob is one. All right. So we're going to put together a proposal with two options. The general, I believe this is the general consensus, is one of the options is going to be the original plan from our previous town meeting. And the other option is going to be the preserve, Walcott Valley, and downtown. Does anyone disagree with those as the two options?
So through the chair, you would need to have the board vote to send those two proposals to town meeting, and then the board will need to vote on which or both or neither of those proposals they would recommend town meeting pass.
Okay. So should I vote two separate votes or just one vote saying we recommend?
Two separate votes would be cleaner.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to move forward the MBTA zoning overlay district proposal with Walcott Valley, the preserve, and the downtown area to town meeting warrant article.
So we want to do the two, I think John was saying two different motions. One is with the two options specified, and the second motion is going to be which one we're going to prefer.
The original one, I think.
So the motion would be to move option 1 and option 4 as we've been describing them to town meeting.
That's my understanding.
Is that what John, was that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay. So we want to move, was there a second on that? Can I get a friendly amendment? I think it was Parker and somebody else maybe seconded it.
You can get a friendly amendment.
Who seconded it?
Second.
Thanks, Jane. So the amendment would be that I'd like to entertain a motion to move forward two proposals. One has Walcott Valley, the preserve, in the downtown area. The other proposal has their Carboni's property and adjoining properties, the preserve, and the downtown area to the town meeting floor as the maps for MBTA communities.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Matthew Ronca.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Hap,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a no. I don't like this plan, but I will be speaking on behalf of the board and put forward the board's interests. So I'd like to the second motion. So we need to decide which of the two we prefer.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
The board could recommend both.
Okay, so we need to decide, as John put it, there's kind of like there's 4 options. We can recommend neither, we can recommend both, we can recommend one or the other. So there's 4 different scenarios. Does anybody want the scenario of recommending neither?
Can I just add something?
Sure.
I kind of agree with what John said earlier. I feel like the planning board is proposing this, and if we have something we don't recommend in something we're proposing, it just kind of makes us look disorganized. That's just my opinion.
I think that happens where town meeting warrant articles get on the town meeting warrant article, and then any sponsoring body could say recommend no action or recommend not approval. Like, I think it just happens. I don't. Does anyone else share that sentiment?
I think we can recommend it and still sleep at night. I think people are going to make their own decision regardless if we recommend it or not and listen to the evidence.
All right, Lucia, go ahead.
I think Matt had his hand up first.
Oh, Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a difference between saying that we don't recommend something versus not offering a recommendation. What we've got are what we think are the 2 best options for different reasons and address different concerns in the town. And it would be reasonable to say that we think these are the best options for different reasons. And having listened to the town, letting the town make the final decision.
So we need to come to a consensus where 5 out of 4, 5 out of the 9 of us need to vote one way or another. So we have 4 options. We've got recommend neither, recommend both, recommend one or the other in either direction. Before we do that, Lucia, go ahead.
I would recommend both. Because as Matt said, there are reasons for recommending one versus the other. And in terms of Walcott and the Preserve, this potentially has an impact for more residents, which is a negative for it. It also has more land that's farther from the commuter rail, which from a planning perspective is a negative. And the Preserve and Carbones has been approved, which is a positive. And I mean, all the reasons why it was the original proposal.
All right, thanks, Lucia. I'm gonna just move to entertain motions here so we can move this along. I think this is my opinion of what I think is the best option. And if we don't get 5 votes, we'll go to other options. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board recommend the map that includes Wakaw Valley, the Preserve, and the downtown area.
So moved.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Michael. Thanks. We're going to go to roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski.
No.
Lucia Lopez.
I just had a question before I say yes or no. Are you saying then we're going to say no? Like, is this saying yes to Walcott and the preserve and no to the preserve and Carbones?
No, this is just saying yes to recommending this proposal.
number 4.
Elise, did you understand the motion correctly?
I did, but I almost feel like I don't want to recommend either, because I don't want to recommend the one with Carbones, because I don't want that one. I just don't like that one. But I don't want to choose one guy. I heard what Matt said, and I almost feel the opposite. I feel like maybe we should just not recommend either. Just leave it. Like, we brought this proposal, we gave you guys 2 options. Now you decide.
I think the important message is that it makes more sense to pass something and let the town pick which they prefer living with.
Right.
I would I know we're in the middle of a vote here, but I would recommend. I like Elise's approach over recommending both.
I mean, we can speak as individuals at the meeting too. So even if we vote to recommend one, that we can all get up there as individuals and say, what we think the best path forward is.
All right. With all that said, Lucia, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matthew.
The original question was, do we vote to recommend the option 4? Is that what we were doing?
Yes.
I'm no.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Hap.
You're muted, Parker. Parker's muted.
My phone's frozen. No.
All right, Jane Moran.
So this is a vote for the positive for option 4.
Yes.
Yes, I vote yes.
Karen Wills.
No.
Vic.
Abstain.
Okay. So Lucia, Michael, Jane, and Karen, you were a yes, and I was a yes, so that's 5.
No, I was a no.
You were a no.
Okay.
Let me see. Lucia, yes. Michael, yes. Jane, yes. So we have 4-4 because Vic abstained. So that doesn't pass, right, John?
Correct.
All right. So all right. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board recommend for approval the original plan that include the Carbones property and adjoining properties, the preserve, and the downtown district. Roll call vote. Elise.
No.
Lucia.
Did we have to move and second that?
Oh yeah, sorry.
So moved.
It's been going on a long time. Elise.
No.
Thank you. Lucia.
Yes.
Matthew.
Yes.
Michael. Was that a no?
No.
Parker.
Yes.
Jane Moran.
Yes.
Karen Wills.
I'm a little confused, maybe because it's so late. Is this for presenting both of them or just presenting the preserve?
No, so we're gonna show both. We
Okay.
previously voted to not recommend.
Right. Yeah, I got that. So what this is?
So this is either to recommend the original proposal, which the town meeting voted no on, or to recommend it for approval. And so what would your preference be?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were voting to present both options.
No. How, Jane, we already voted to present both options. This is if we want to recommend the original proposal.
Oh, you're right, Karen, it's late. Yes.
So you want to recommend the original proposal?
We're not going to,
The one that got voted down at last town meeting.
We're presenting both. It's whether we're voting as a board whether we want to recommend it over the other option or with the other option or at all.
I'm sorry, I don't like it, but I'd like to present, it sounds like we're voting to present two. That's what I thought I was voting
We
to.
already voted on that.
Yep, we're gonna present both. Option with the preserve, Walcott Valley, and downtown. We said, even though we're presenting it, we said we don't recommend it. This other option was the original one, and so right now we've got 3 yes votes, 3 no votes, like that. We're not, so it's tied whether we recommend it, yes or no. So we can
I don't like the first one.
Okay. Vic.
Abstain.
Okay. And Rob is a no. So we don't recommend this one either. So we're going to propose both plans with recommending neither. So that's what we're moving to the town meeting floor. Matthew, go ahead.
I would suggest that we phrase it slightly differently, as we don't have, the board hasn't made a preference over either. I'd also suggest, because for logical consistency, starting with presenting the original plan first and then going to the new one, because it makes for an easier discussion.
John, do we need to iron out any of these details in the meeting now tonight, or can this be done like maybe in a small working group to prepare for town meeting?
No, you can't do board.
No, not the whole board, but like there's whether it's me, the chair, you, maybe 1 or 2 people prepare slides for the town meeting.
I mean, yes, but that's not what Matthew was asking.
Oh, Matthew,
he was asking the order of the articles.
Well, it's one article, right? It's just the order.
The order of the proposals within the article.
Do we need to vote on that? I don't know what.
I mean, if the board just wants to tell me what they want to do, you don't have to vote. We don't need an official vote on that.
I like Matthew's suggestion, having the original and then going to the newer option second. I think it makes sense chronologically.
Same.
Yeah, same. It's cleaner.
Okay, that's at least 5. So, okay. All right. This is kind of torturous. But do we need to do anything to close this discussion, John?
You need to close the public hearing.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing on the MBTA communities.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vika South Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. All right. We still have another agenda item on our agenda.
Jeff, are you still with us?
John, do you see Joe, you're going to talk for 6 Nebraska Street?
Yes, I thought I would.
All right, let me, do I need, for definitive subdivision plan, do I need to open a public hearing for this, John, or what do
Yes.
we need? So I'd like to I'd like to entertain a motion to open a public hearing for 6 Nebraska Street definitive subdivision plan.
So moved.
Move. Second.
Okay.
All right, roll call vote. Elise Mayalowski, we'll go back to Elise. Lucia?
Oh, I said yes.
Oh, okay. Lucia?
Yes.
All right. Matthew?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Vic?
Yes.
And Rob is a yes. All right, Joe, thank you for bearing with us this meeting. We're going to try to wrap it up pretty quickly and see what we can cover. And I appreciate you sticking with us this whole time. But if you'd like to give us an introduction to what would like to be done here.
Sure. John, I'm having issues on my end. Could you share a copy of the plan?
Joe, I can make you a panel member instead of just
Okay,
letting you speak.
sure.
If that would help.
Yep.
All right, you're gonna get kicked out, and then I'll let you back in.
Okay, great. Is that up on the screen for everyone to see?
Yep.
Okay. What we're talking about is number 6 Nebraska Street. That's one of the 3 streets off of Pleasant Street between Main and Maple. Number 6 is a 4.65 acre parcel owned by William Diana, U19290. It's Bill's home, you see here. He's got an outbuilding, a screen porch, a pool, and lawn areas. It's really a residential use. We have the right-of-way of Nebraska Street, which shows up on plans as early as 1914. It was confirmed on a plan endorsed by the planning board in March of 1980. A variance was granted in 1992 because the parcel had insufficient frontage along Nebraska Street. That granting of a variance for the frontage issue created this 4.65 acre building lot. Fast forward to 2024, one of Bill's sons, Jeff, has a young family, would like to stay in town, and given the lack of frontage along Nebraska Street, and extension to Nebraska Street seemed the only way to create that buildable lot that Jeff is looking for in order to keep his family here in town. So we have proposed an extension to Nebraska Street that includes this cul-de-sac, this turnaround here. That bulb, in line with planning board rules and regulations, would give us the frontage we need in the RA zone district, which the parcel falls in. So a new lot 1 would encompass Bill's home, would get frontage along the bulb, and the new lot 2 would be the large lot, 164,000 square feet, and Jeff would build his home down in here. As part of the review of all this and our due diligence, our surveys, boundary line and topographical, we identified a couple of issues that Jeff has decided to get out in front of. One is wetlands resource areas at the northerly corner and the southwesterly corner. No work is proposed in those areas. Municipal water and sewer is available in Nebraska Street. Jeff has received approval from the DPW to extend those services into the site. So they will be on town water and sewer. We have, Jeff has reached out as part of the pre-submission process, but then followed up with the Hopkinton Fire Department, and they are in agreement that our route to access the site with the fire apparatus would satisfy their requirements. So we have jumped out in front of a lot of those issues. The one that pops up frequently, the board has discussed with us many times, is stormwater. We have waivers in our proposal that move us away from the traditional pavement inside that turnaround to something that utilizes the existing driveways. As a result, we knock down our numbers with regard to stormwater mitigation dramatically. So we're able to introduce an infiltration area down in here that will handle the home and the increases that we see, so that we can provide the control and mitigation to bring up post-development flow and a rate and volume of flow down below pre-development levels. And then finally, I guess the one step that's often overlooked in all of this is Jeff has gone to all of the abutters. I think you'll notice in the file that there are an awful lot of letters of support for the project, the way it's been proposed, and the idea of helping a young family stay in town. So I guess in summary, we're looking for one new home on the 4.65 acres, and we've done an awful lot with this design plan to mitigate the impacts from that change.
It's been a long night. I was talking on mute. Sorry about that. Thanks for the overview, Joe. I appreciate it. John, do you have any kind of a staff report of this project?
Yeah, so the proposed plan is just creating that bulb of a cul-de-sac. So not necessarily constructing the whole road, but just that extension that would allow for frontage for the new lot. Nebraska Street, as Joe had mentioned, is a private road already in existence and has been for a number of decades at this point. And the proposed extension doesn't appear to create any significant change to the area adversely or otherwise. And as Joe had noted, we've received a number of letters of support from neighbors, and I think it's worthy of note that no letters or comments in opposition have been received as well. So it seems like the neighborhood is pretty in support of this, and it would just be for one additional lot.
Where are we with the consultant report?
I'm sorry, it's late and my brain is mush. Joe, have we gotten it to you yet, or are we still waiting on that?
Yes, we received that last Thursday. Joe was kind enough to email that over to us. There were a couple of things that needed follow-up. We weren't able to get those together in time for the peer review to review our comments. So we have responses in the works, but haven't taken that step yet.
All right, let's, does the board want to try to go on a site walk? Does that seem appropriate here?
Sure.
I'm going to say, let's try to schedule one. Joe, is that possible?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
I can't do, I don't know that it needs to be me, that I have to be there, but I know I can't do this weekend. Would potentially the next weekend, the what is that next weekend?
The 9th.
16th.
The 16th, Saturday the 16th.
Yep.
Would like 9 o'clock work?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Works for me.
All right, so if we just go to the end of Nebraska and park along the road, does that work?
Sure.
Okay. I think because of the late hour, I think that's where we'd like to leave it tonight. We don't have the kind of the consultant report finalized. We're going to need to get that done. I think this is a good stopping point. So, John, do I need to, if you're okay, Joe, I'd like to continue this to our next hearing.
Yeah, please do.
John, do I need to make an official motion to continue this, or?
Yes, but you don't have to continue the decision because it's not due until January 7th.
All right. I'd like, so we don't have a meeting on the 18th. What's our next meeting?
December 2nd.
I'd like to entertain a motion to continue the 6 Nebraska Street public hearing definitive subdivision plan to December 2nd.
So moved.
Thanks, Matthew.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Elise Malowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right, so at this point, thanks, Joe. We'll see you on December 2nd.
Great.
And
Thank you.
we'll see you before then on the sidewalk, this November 16th at 9 a.m. Oh, Jeff, before I think I just continued it. Can I allow Jeff to speak? I saw he raised his hand here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Jeff, go ahead. Jeff, you look unmuted, but we can't hear you. I don't know what to do at this point. Jeff, I apologize, but we can't hear you if you're
To the chair?
the Zoom. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, Jeff just texted me, technical issues on his end. He can certainly weigh in at the site meeting or the December 2nd meeting.
All right, that sounds awesome. I appreciate it. So at this point, we'll have a chance, like Joe said, to talk to Jeff next time. But I'd like to make a motion or entertain a motion to adjourn for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks. Roll call vote. Elise Malowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Jane Moran,
Yes.
Karen Wills,
Yes.
Vikasath Prati,
Yes.
and Rob Benson's a yes. Thanks, everybody. Longest meeting we've had in quite a while. When I first joined the board, they were like all this long. So